Start recording. So, hello there.
Hello, I'm
So,
Oliver.
nice to talk with you, Oliver. Uh, you contacted me about doing this video
Yes.
call, and I'm excited to do it. And
Mhm.
you told me about topics that are of interest to you. And
Yes.
I want to delve into all of those because I was like, wow, this is really interesting. But before we do that, maybe you can tell me a few things about yourself. Like, of course, you said your name, but yeah, whatever you
Yeah.
want to share.
Mhm. Well, of course, my name's Oliver. I'm currently a high school student who, is I'm quite interested in things like Linux and making all kinds of art and stuff like architecture, which we can touch on a little bit later. Um, but yeah, just generally, yeah, those things.
So, high school, and have you finished high school, or you still have
No,
high school left?
I'm currently heading into my junior year, so that would be 11th grade.
Okay. And
Mhm.
how does that work in practice? Like, have you decided on what you want to specialize on, or is it kind of a generalist level yet, and you specialize later?
Um, in America, you have these core classes that you're supposed to take. So that'd be like history, math, English, stuff like that. But then you can also take what they call electives,
Mm,
which is classes of interest to you. So it depends on the school, what kind of classes they have, but you kind of do have to take them because you have these credits that you have to complete
mm-hmm,
every semester.
mm-hmm,
Um, but yeah, some classes are nice, some are not. But there's not really like any class for like, oh yeah, we're going to teach you about Linux and stuff. Well, there's computer science, but I'm personally homeschooled, so I don't really go to public school. I just have because of that, I have a lot of free time on my hands that I get to do, all kinds of things like learning and um, learning architecture, working on like Blender and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And like, what is like your vision for what you want to focus on? Like you mentioned architecture, so would that be
Um,
one? Like,
yeah, that would be my primary one. I thought about IT a little bit before, but IT field's a bit interesting right now with the level of uncertainty. But yeah, our
hmm
architecture is something I'm really, really passionate about, and um, I've been using Blender for a pretty long time now, so I'm pretty well versed in it. So I just use that on typically for my projects, which
hmm
are like in the field of architecture visualization, which you basically just have this 3D space in Blender that you get to design whatever you want, and I focus on like interiors and uh, I some exteriors if my hardware can handle it, of course. So
Uh-huh. 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 And of course, now I know nothing about architecture, and other than it has to stand, it has to work. But
yeah.
like, are there like some schools of thought? Like when you're designing an interior, are there like different competing theories of what is a good interior, or there is no such thing?
um yes and no.
Mm,
It depends. Like architecture is a little bit separated, in my opinion, from interior design, which is a different field.
mm,
Um, but ultimately, from what I've been told, from like what I researched on some architect for forums and stuff, is you have like a client gives you like a brief, and then you're supposed to create like a building based on the client's description of what they want, and then you go further from there. Um, Typically, it's not like all willy nilly, like, oh yeah, you get to design everything from scratch. No, you
mm,
have like a baseline of what the client wants. Else, you're not
mhm.
going to make money. So
And what if the client asks something with which architecturally would not make sense, or would lead to an outcome that would be not just suboptimal but barely functional, let's say. Can that happen? Like, what do you do in that case?
I'm not entirely sure because I'm not an architect.
Of course, of course.
But I think there would have to be some talks with the client about that, because of course architecture has, since it's more of a generalist degree in a sense, there's like an art side and a engineering side to it, so you have to kind of combine those together to make a building that stands and make it actually safe and usable so it doesn't fall.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. So I guess at some level you have to have like at least those basic people skills to say, well, you know
Mhm.
what, sounds
Yeah,
good, but yeah, we also have to consider the science.
yeah, absolutely.
Good. So, um, homeschooling. You mentioned homeschooling and how you have a lot of free time. How has that affected your interests, you think, and the kind of topics or projects you have picked up? For example, you also mentioned Blender.
Yeah, it it may have influenced me to focus on more solitary activities and hobbies. Simply because the only downside I can think of homeschooling is the socialization part, which,
Hmm.
I have other gatherings that I go to in my community, with in terms of socializing, so I have that part pretty much solved. But for the activities and interest I have, I've just gravitated more toward technology. Like, I've been interested in technology. Like, I started using Linux back in 2019.
Hmm.
So yeah, I it's just been something I've just been doing for a while now.
Hmm.
And then Blender is, I got interested through some friend of mine. Um, I was using Blender, like, it was 2019 before they released that 2.80 update with the major UI redesign. Like, I used all the entire gray old disgusting UI. It was fine. It was fine, but it was not the best compared to now.
Hmm. Yeah, ever since, of course, it has gained a massive following,
Oh
I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. Just of course, an aside here. You mentioned 2019, and I'm like, my initial reaction is like, okay, so a couple of years ago, and then I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wait, that was 7 years ago. So now
Yeah.
you're roughly an adult. I don't know exactly, but back then you
I
were
am, yeah.
basically
I'm
just
16.
beginning to be a teen.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I was just below 10 actually.
exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know how I actually did it. Of course,
Hmm.
the projects that we're working on were a lot more childish,
Hmm.
7 years ago than now. But it, the fact that I still learned Blender with an old UI is still crazy to me. I don't know how I did it actually. It's just,
Yeah.
YouTube. I just watch YouTube and, yeah, YouTube videos. The internet
Yeah.
is a treasure of information if you use it wisely enough, of course.
Yes. And of course, that I think ties nicely into one of the topics you told me about in our exchange ahead of this video, where you mentioned minimalism in the context of
Yeah.
distractions as well online.
Yes.
And I think YouTube is a
Physical
good
minimalism.
example. Hmm.
Yeah. Physical minimalism and actual minimalism. I do
Mhm.
both. So
Mhm. Okay,
yeah.
you do both. So, tell me a little bit. Like, okay, you also made the distinction there. So, of course, I'm interested in that as well. Physical
Mhm.
versus actual. Like, please elaborate. So, tell me, what do
Yeah.
you
So
do? How do you
what
think of this?
in the so last year, especially, like, earlier in my teen years, I became pretty addicted to social media. The TikTok, the YouTube Shorts and stuff. And I set, like, myself a New Year's resolution, as they say, and there's a saying that goes, "Oh yeah, you'll set up a New Year's resolution and you only follow for 10 days and you'll drop off the bandwagon."
Yeah.
No, but I continued along anyway. And this one thing, that this one book I started reading was called The Digital Minimalism. It's by Cal Newport. It's
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
phenomenal book, which just basically talks about just kind of reducing the things you're actually doing on a computer, like the optional technologies like watching YouTube shorts for entertainment, or I don't know, scrolling social media or whatever. Um, and instead, replacing those things with other activities like reading books, going outside, going on a walk, riding a bicycle or something like that. Um, and so I just started doing those things because it talks about the book, like a 30-day declutter, where you're just supposed to
Mm.
stop using those optional technologies, quote unquote optional, um, for 30 days.
Mhm.
And then you're supposed to reevaluate at the 30-day mark and ask yourself, hey, do I really, really need like Instagram, for example?
Mhm.
For me, the answer was no.
Mhm.
I didn't need Twitter either, or YouTube or anything like that, besides for the educational content. But yeah, so I just did that, and I don't know. I just started practicing my self control, my discipline from there.
Mhm.
Um, through like little wins, like waiting, like for like when I sat at the dinner table, I waited for everyone else to start eating before I started eating, and
Mhm.
just those little wins to build up my discipline. Um, and then back in March with actual minimalism, physical.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Mhm.
I just found that I had a lot of stuff, and yeah, I just got rid of a lot of stuff.
Mm.
With another book I read about it, it was more toward Japanese minimalism. I forgot the book's name.
Marie Kondo, maybe? I think
No,
it's an
I
author that
forgot.
comes up in this context. Yeah.
I would have to research about it,
Okay, okay,
but
no problem. Yeah.
I found it somewhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, yeah, but so I just got rid of a lot of stuff, and yeah, it can. I just found that I just don't need a lot of stuff, so I just
Mhm.
got rid of
Mhm.
it.
So, to somebody who has no idea what it means to have few things, like the physical
Mhm.
clutter now. Of course, I think the digital, I think everybody can relate to that at
Oh
some
yeah.
level, right? But of
Mhm.
course, like the physical, concretely, what does that mean? Like when we say few stuff, what are we thinking about?
I think minimalism, it depends how you look at it, but I don't think that minimalism should be, oh yeah, you can fit everything in a backpack, and you live your life as a nomad. I think rather it's being intentional with what you have.
Mm.
And like, do you need like 3 pairs of scissors? Probably not. Do you need 15 pens?
Mhm.
Probably not. It, do you have like an actual use case for it? Like, for example, I have this laptop that I'm currently talking to you with. Obviously, this is something I use on a daily basis. So I'm going to obviously keep it because it's very useful to me. So only the things that are really useful to me I actually keep. Um, but it depends on the person. They will have to do it, like a self reflection, and
Mhm.
ask themselves, "Hey, is this thing is that something I actually need? If it's not, then just throw it away
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
donate or whatever, depending on the thing."
Yeah, I like how you frame it because with rules like this, we oftentimes fall in the trap of taking them literally. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
minimalism means you only have three things or whatever, right? Like you
Yeah.
have a
Mhm.
backpack, literally. If you don't have a backpack, you're not a true minimalist, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you frame it along the lines of, well, apply judgment, like you have to
Mhm.
think about it. And I think that's much more interesting and applicable to actual day-to-day affairs, and of
Yeah.
course to the sensitivities of each person.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree on that.
So
uh,
what do you think is the experience thus far? So you have been doing minimalism online and
since
offline
Yeah. So
for
di
6 months
digital
now.
minimal
What
digital minimalism for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
I started January
Mm-hmm.
1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then physical minimalism, it was the start of March, or sorry, end of March.
Mm-hmm.
So beginning of April.
Mm-hmm. So, in this amount of time, have you noticed any difference in your life? And if yes, what would that be like?
Yeah. it's a lot easier to clean my room. Yeah. Not only that though, it's just it's easier to find stuff, I guess,
Mhm,
and it's you just don't have to worry about that much.
mhm,
Like I have thought about which I want to get into with you later as a
mhm,
topic, financial independence.
mm,
And I think minimalism and living within your means is a very, very important part of it. So that
mhm,
was another thing. I've just also just simply noticed that like I've been using the things that I already have as tools than just buying a entirely separate new thing. Like
mm,
I have, yeah, I have a couple other computers. They're servers, uh, but you know they're useful. I still put several stuff on there, but I use those existing things for servers instead of like buying like another computer on
mm.
eBay or something like that because I already have a couple computers that I just use exclusively for servers. So
Very good, very good. So we will get into financial independence. There is this other topic you just brought up, which is about,
mhm.
roughly speaking, the consumerist attitude, which I want to get to as well. And then there
Mhm.
is also something you said, of course, tongue in cheek, but I think is also important, like quitting my room, right? Like it's easier. It's easier to get out, basically. And I think that's also
Yeah,
an
cleaning
important
cleaning the
thing.
room, cleaning the room.
Cleaning the room, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, cleaning the room. Of course, cleaning the room, but if you have fewer things to do in the room, it will be like leaving the room as well, which
Yeah.
is what I wanted to get to. But the point is that if you have more things to do on the computer and by extension more things to do in your room, basically you never get out and eventually you get sucked into a world that is a filter bubble and eventually a projection of your own biases, fears,
Mhm.
anxieties, or whatever. Whereas getting out there is kind of a reality check as well. It's like, okay, let me touch grass or touch base or touch reality a little bit.
Yeah, I actually have noticed that. Also, this year I've been trying to interact with more people out, and over the course of this year, I've just noticed that, man, the world is pretty different from my perspective. uh, it like, for instance, I see like I hear online, oh yeah, some people like are not using AI to do some things. Yeah, there are actually a lot of people in the real world who are using AI, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Mhm,
Um, or just simply doing other activities such as sports. Like I'm not necessarily a big sports guy personally, um, but I see I have friends of mine who do like tennis or soccer or whatever, you know, um, and they're living out in the real world and also just going outside and experiencing nature. That's something I started last September,
mhm.
which also has been really beneficial to me.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm. The thing is that to connect now to the point of consumerism, and then we can go into financial independence. The thing is that it's very easy to convince yourself that what you are missing in your life is one purchase away. Like, oh, if only I buy this new toy, effectively, right? This new keyboard,
Mhm.
this new computer, this new app, or whatever. It's the one thing that will fix my life, right? And it's very easy to convince yourself of that. And eventually you end up with clutter and you don't appreciate each of the things you already have.
Yeah. I would also mention, yeah, I have grown a greater appreciation of the things that I already have, and to say with the consumerism attitude, I would say that, and that's something, that's a problem that I have faced too. Um, is give yourself a amount of time, like for example, a week, and ask yourself, like, if it's something you really, really want, like right now, like, oh, I really, really want this keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself a week and ask yourself, do I really need this keyboard? Do I still really, really have the desire to buy this keyboard? And if if I still do have the desire, is it useful to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Um, for instance, I last year I faced some hand pain. And it's a meme, I guess, but it's quite literal. It's the Emacs pinky.
Of course.
It's an actual thing.
Hmm.
So my pinky was actually hurting a lot, but it was not till I changed a couple things on my keyboard, my existing laptop keyboard. Probably it's not the best, but it still works. And then using this program called a Key D on Linux,
Hmm.
and I just set up like homerow mods and stuff on my keyboard, and well, my hand pain's gone now. So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, 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 exactly. Me, one trick I do. I don't have this issue anymore, but I used to. One trick I do is, I really want to buy something, and I'm like, okay, to do, buy the thing, and scheduled for 3 months into the future. And you know, by the time that task comes, I'm like, oh, do I really want to part ways
yeah,
with, this 50 euro or whatever? Like, I really like my money.
yeah.
Good, good, good. So let's get into financial independence, which ties into this. So, yeah, tell me first, what is your outlook here? Like, what are we talking about when we are referring to financial independence?
For me, the outlook here is it just freedom. It overall freedom. I love like I see on your blog post, for example. Oh yeah, you have you still have yourself work. You build your own house and stuff, but you have a lot more free time than a standard American, your age, for example, or
Mm,
any adult past the age of 18, I guess, who has a full time job and everything. And I like I have a lot of free time on my hands now, but eventually I'm going to lose that free time as I grow older. And I'm going to have to constantly work for the rest of my life till I'm like 60, 65, or whatever the age of retirement is at this point. Um, and I don't necessarily want that. I would love to start saving money now. And, you know, I don't know about the investing part and stuff. Like, I don't really, I'm not into finances.
mm, mhm,
So, um, but eventually, like, invest my money in somewhere, wait like 20 years maybe. And then I retire at an earlier age while still having less things to in total, like just my overall living um, style,
mhm,
lifestyle, and then just yeah, from there have a lot more free time on my hands. Basically, kind of. I know you still have a lot more responsibilities, especially if you have a family in the future.
mhm,
Um, but still, like have more free time closer to what I have now later in my life.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good goal. I think everybody would want that eventually. Like if you
Mhm.
were to present that option to them. Uh, I guess the key here, and it connects to what we were discussing earlier, the key here is how do you avoid growing attached to all those little things, which together amount to big things, and
Mhm.
then they hold you back, like clutter in your life now in terms of subscriptions and fake ones effectively that you could live without, and needs you think you have, and now you have to pay for all those things, which means that you have to finance them, which means that you have to do extra work, and so of course the
Mhm.
cycle repeats. So of
Yes.
course it's interesting how you have tied those together. One tricky part, of course, with this approach is that you are effectively making a bet where it's like I will sacrifice my present or short-term wellness, well-being, for
Mhm.
maximizing my future well-being. So the bet here is that well, I will be there to live that future. Like that future will
Mhm.
be waiting for me. So,
Yes.
which is of course a risk, but you are willing to take that risk, of course.
Mhm. Yeah. It obviously none of us can predict the future here, but it my life as it stands now is not necessarily like bad, of course. Like, would I like some things? yes, but ultimately I don't need them, and I'm fine with what I have now. So,
Hmm.
it,
Hmm. Of course, here there is a joke, like I discuss these topics also with people, and it's a little
Mhm.
bit funny for me because I'm like, I am the guy who has no money, so let me give you financial advice. It's like,
Yeah.
I know everything about money. So the thing here, of course, is that um, savings or generally building up capacity, right, for the future. That's the one part of it. The other part of it is having some revenue generating capacity as well, which could be like your skills or maybe some business or basically something that can bring money in. Because
Mhm.
no matter how much you have stored, it can be quickly wiped away if you don't have any money coming in. Let's say, for
Yeah.
example, giving a random number, you have like $100,000 in the bank, right? And you have lost your job, and you cannot find any job. You have stayed behind, the technology or whatever. So it's impossible for you to get employed again, or you don't have a business going or whatever. Like you will burn through that 100K very quickly, like in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Eventually, it's not enough money. Like at some point, you need to bring new money in.
Mhm. Yeah. I see that you're doing that, through your coaching, but it's also just depends. Definitely agree with that, but also how much stuff do you actually have? Like, uh, I think I remember reading this point you made on one of your blog posts. I don't remember which one exactly, but you mentioned how someone could live like someone who has a billionaire.
Hmm.
I don't know, Elon Musk, and he has all these like yachts or whatever. He just has a boatload of money, I guess, and he is technicality financially independent, but like, and I'm going to take you as an example because you're the best case scenario, but or compared to someone like you who says is barely making any money, you're still managing to be financially independent, but you
Hmm.
don't have 5 boats or a bunch of stuff.
Correct, correct.
And I think depending on how much stuff you have and how we like whether you're living above your means or below your means or within your means rather, it depends how well you're going to do later in life.
Hmm. Hmm. Correct, correct. You're right, you're right. And I think you are approaching it the right way with what you talked about earlier as well, like living within your means, approaching it from a minimalist perspective. I think it is coherent. This is a coherent view and it makes perfect sense. I am just bringing up the side which is the revenue generating side, just so that you
Mhm.
have that like on your radar as well, because it matters too.
Yeah.
The thing with minimalism slash decluttering, which we kind of have anticipated here, it's also a matter of once you have done the initial reset, the initial cleanup,
Mhm.
you also gradually condition yourself to eventually not want more things. Eventually it becomes your new normal. At the beginning maybe you are fighting against it. Now you
Mhm.
have to resist the urge, but eventually it's just coming naturally to you.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Hmm.
It,
Hmm.
I'm really, really trying to find this book. I forgot the book's name. I have it somewhere in my notes.
Hmm.
Um, but it's yeah, I think, do I have it here? No, I don't. Oh. But yeah, it's the book that I read does go over like such things where eventually it just becomes easier over time. Like, oh yeah, you have this one thing, I guess you just throw it away without even thinking about it. Like, yeah, and I have noticed that with myself over the past couple months, where I am still like, and I think that minimalism is not just something that you're just going to do one time, like you mentioned, but also something continuously over time. the more and more stuff you gather, you have to throw it away again, and it's just it's a cycle. Of course, you condition yourself over time, but sometimes people do get more things, and they have to periodically check. Hey, do I still need this item? If not, throw it away.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Correct,
it just
correct.
becomes easier over time.
The thing with wanting more things, for example, you mentioned like the five boats, and the thing with wanting more things is that those things do not exist independent of other things, of their prerequisites. Like, for example, let's say I want to have five boats, right? So, five boats means that I have to have a safe haven for the five boats. It means that either I will be there checking myself or I will have a trusted person checking on my behalf. How can I trust this person to be actually genuine or another gold digger, for example? So I need some other means to check that this person is right. And basically, we can keep going like that. And very quickly, you realize that the item of your desire becomes like a chain of desires, effectively. Like you need this, so you have to have that and the other. So it's a dependency tree, kind of what we have with Linux
Mhm.
packages. And you cannot just
Yeah,
have the thing on its own.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, it. I don't have too many things that require like that entire desire tree, I guess. Um, like I mean, I do, for example, I have a desire to buy more RAM so I can work on larger projects, but unfortunately, RAM is really, really, really expensive right now,
No, no.
so I can't afford it. But
These
yeah,
days,
it like
especially, it's impossible to buy RAM, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
but it's something that I would need in the future. But
Mhm,
one
mhm,
thing that has taught me, like when I started Blender, I worked on this computer that was like a really really cheap computer, and it was very slow. It was 2019, so I guess
mhm,
four gigs of RAM was a little more acceptable. But it was 4 gigs of RAM. It was when I guess a 2.2 gigahertz CPU with one core, like literally one core and two threads. It
mhm,
was very very slow, but I
mhm,
still managed to do my Blender projects. And something that really that experience has taught me is the optimization part of Blender, because you can make a lot of optimizations in Blender
mm,
to be able to work on such big projects on limited hardware. And I think that if I started on something, like an, I don't know, RTX 4090 or 3090 or whatever, I wouldn't have learned those optimizations, and I would have never
mm,
really needed to. But if I, in that experience, um, it's just more and more money,
mhm,
and that um, I just I just found that I learned a lot more when I had a lot less, focusing on the hardware I have and focusing more on my skills rather than the crazy expensive hardware that I could have. And oh yeah, being like, oh well, this is not enough. I'm gonna have to get more, like a bigger GPU, because eventually if you don't learn the optimizations, you're gonna run out of VRAM or whatever,
mhm,
and you'll just have to um, buy a new thing or whatever, unless you actually learn the optimizations then. But starting from that start with cheaper hardware, I think really really benefited me. So
mhm, mhm. And of course, if you think about it, it's rational both ways. Like if you have constraints, it's rational for you to maximize what you have, right? So you want
mhm.
to squeeze out every ounce of optimality that you can get, right?
Yeah.
But if you
Mhm.
have, let's say, infinite or basically RAM more or resources more than you could ever exhaust, then the rational thing to do is to just not try to optimize, because
Yes.
what's the point? Like you cannot optimize without constraints. You only optimize within constraints.
Mhm.
But I think yes, of course, having those constraints, I think serves you well long term, because it also teaches you practical skills. as well as doing some character building. It's like, I have experienced this, so it's kind of something that will stay with me as an attitude, as an approach.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would say that my hardware is definitely a lot better now than the cheap computer I used to have, which is also one of my servers now.
Hmm.
But like my current hardware that I have, it's like an HP Victus. It's a gaming laptop.
Yeah.
It's still not the best. Like I still and I would say though, if you have like a bunch of money and you have a 5090 or whatever, um, you could you iterate faster, of course, on those projects. But it, I would say again, yeah, you're just it's the character you have. You just oh yeah, you need more. You just buy another computer part or whatever. Um, but yeah, again, my computer is not the best. I still have like an RTX 3050,
Hmm.
which is 4 gigs of VRAM, and it's not the best considering that I still have to use my CPU most of the time for rendering, and then even then, I
Hmm.
sometimes run out of RAM, and then I have to use swap, and the swap sometimes gets used all the way. But it's the optimization part that you have to really focus on, I think, especially toward the end of the projects. So.
Correct, correct. Earlier, we made a point about applying judgment and how
Mhm.
minimalism is not, and generally every kind of prescription, it's not really a rule that you apply mindlessly because that very quickly will lead to stupidity. So,
Mhm.
in a scenario like this, like you can eventually reach a point where the right thing to do is to buy the best possible equipment you can afford, because that saves you from all the trouble, or which is maybe an inconvenience but eventually can become a trouble of, oh, this thing is running out of resources, it's swapping, it's
Mhm.
doing this, it's doing that, maybe it will crash, maybe I will lose all my work, and now something that took me 1 hour will take me 10 hours or whatever. So that eventually takes away from your freedom. That will eat away at your free time, right? So um,
Yeah.
we always have to apply like the principles in light of the goal or the value. Like, what is the thing we really care about? It's not having old hardware, it's having freedom. And maybe old hardware is a conduit to that, or it helps towards that end.
Yeah, with regarding old hardware, I also just care about the environment.
Hmm. Hmm.
And of course, a lot of new hardware right now, especially, is very expensive. And I think using old hardware, especially for things like servers, which we can later get into if you want,
Hmm.
um, it, it brings new life into them again. It's amazing what you can do with Linux compared to Windows, where like, oh yeah, Windows eats a bunch of RAM and the start the what I heard this from one YouTube video that I watched some long time ago. But like the Windows menu is made out of like the React framework, and if you spam it, the Windows key long enough, it will jump this CPU to 99% use.
Wow.
But yeah, Linux by default is a lot more, well, I guess minimalistic.
Mm.
You just have almost nothing, like just system D, basic TTY and stuff like that, and then you can just build on top of that, and you can you do a lot more with the limited resources you have on Linux because a lot of the resources are not being used in the first place compared
Mhm.
to Windows.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. Which, of course, we can go into the servers since you are on that topic. So tell me, of course, it connects also to independence in general, but yeah, tell me more about servers. Like, what are we talking about here? What are you doing with them?
Yeah, so my servers are laptops. I do have a cloud server that I do host for use for some public stuff, but yeah, I mainly host self-host related things like Image, which is like a photo management library. It's basically an alternative to Google Photos.
Mm.
And when I guess I used to self-host like Navidrome stuff, which is like a music server alternative to Spotify. Basically, I self-host things that I could use as a hosted service, but I choose not to because a lot of these hosted services require some trade of personal information, and I just choose not to share it. And there's this concept of, I'm not going to say the actual word, but it's called encryptification.
Mm-hmm,
Maybe you've heard
mm-hmm,
of it before.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, and with more and more of these companies, getting greedy and everything, um, I can just circumvent that entirely just by hosting stuff on my own hardware. And I think that's combined, with the privacy aspect of it and the independence aspect of it is amazing to me. Um,
mm-hmm.
of course, you still have to rely on some independence, like you have your internet service provider. Like, how are you going to connect to it remotely? Or can you port forward, for example, and stuff like that? You do have some independence on other companies still, but I think going the right direction towards
Mm-hmm.
self-hosting, you're ultimately going to get more independence in the future. And even just self-hosting, like, has taught me a lot of things about Linux, even before I started using it, or well, after I started using it in 2019,
Mm.
where I was mainly using, at the time I was using Linux Mint.
Mm-hmm.
And then I eventually switched to Arch and stuff, and I learned a lot more about the Linux command line, and now I do everything in the command line basically. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it, I self-host. Um, I use multiple servers. Like, one of them is a backup server, and then I connect all of them using this one tool called Nebula, um, which is like basically a VPN that just connects everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have all my computers that I just back up at a certain time using a systemd timer and just a backup script I wrote a little bit ago.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And how is to manage servers? Like, is it a lot of work? Like, do you have to check the security? Like, do they require upkeep? Do you have to block the bots? Like, how does that
it
world work? Me, I know nothing, by the way,
yeah,
about it. Like,
it depends.
mm.
Like, if if you port forward, for example, and you expose something like a, I don't know, Jellyfin, which is a media management library
Mm.
server service that you can self-host. That you do then have to worry about the security of it, and whether you're putting it in behind like a reverse proxy, like something like Caddy or Nginx or whatever, um, to make sure that you only expose like port 8080, or sorry, 80 or 443, which is HTTPS and HTTP. Um, yeah, or you just have like a VPN connection to your home, like WireGuard, for
Mm.
instance, and you just open one port, and it's basically invisible to the public internet, and it's a lot more secure to access your home services than opening several ports to open them to the public internet.
Ah.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it just depends what you do. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's this last service that's called Tailscale, which is insanely popular for beginners, which is like basically like I guess another, what they call mesh VPN,
Mm.
that you can just connect everything together. Like, it's basically like magic. You can just create an account on there, get everything set up in 10 minutes, and yeah, all your computers are connected on any network, even if you travel across the world or something like that. So
Okay, wow, that's impressive. And do you make good use of this? Like, do the servers actually help you? Like, do you connect to them from outside the house, maybe from far away, or basically you use them within the house?
I most of the time use them within the house, but sometimes I do go out of the house with my laptop. I often don't, though, um, to do related computer work. And I do have like some of my files on the server because I just simply don't have enough storage on my computer, and I just access them remotely. It- but again, it's not like that often. I don't use that.
Mm-hmm.
VPN that often. So
Very well, very well. Of course, specifically about servers, but also generally about independence, there is always a trade-off, which is, well, you get, of course, independence from all these companies or all these providers that want to take advantage of you or whatever, um, at the cost of, well, doing some of the work yourself. Like, you have to take care of things, make sure they are in good order. If something breaks, you have to fix it,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
that's something I'll touch on actually.
Hmm.
Maintaining servers is something I particularly kind of hate doing now. Because I have a lot of them, I guess, and I've been
Mm.
trying to minimize them over time.
Mhm.
But it because of money constraints, I simply can't just combine every server into one if I wanted to. I
Mm.
just can't right now.
Mhm.
But it depends on the tool you use. Like if you use like Debian, for instance, like yeah, it's obviously going to be more work, but you can automate some of it. Like I don't know, having like a cron job, for instance, that updates your Docker containers every Sunday night or something like that. And then there's like the more declarative approach, which is like NixOS, Ansible,
Mm.
which comes in really really handy for multiple servers. Because you can just manage everything in a Git repo.
Mhm. Mhm.
It just I think it just depends on the tool you use ultimately and how many servers you have. That will depend on the maintenance. But if anyone is listening to this and they want to get into self-hosting, I would say just use whatever computer you have, like whatever old computer you have, and just install something like Debian. That's what I started out with. Install Docker on top, watch a couple YouTube videos. There's so many of them out there.
Mhm.
And then yeah, just stick with one server and yeah, just see what you really need. Because also another thing I'll mention is I used to self-host a lot of services, like 30 different kinds of services. I reduced
Mm.
that down very very heavily. Like I
Mhm.
barely self-host much now, but the services I use now that I self-host are a lot more used than the 30 different services I had previously. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Of course, of course. It's also part of, well, learning what your needs are, and
Mhm.
uh, for some you can reason about, but for others you have to experiment, and it's a process of trial and error. So you might overshoot in the beginning, and that's totally
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
provided, of course, you fix it later, so you don't have all the
Yeah.
clutter. Yeah.
My servers have broke multiple times in the past. I mean,
Mhm.
due to me playing around with them, it's like
Mhm.
if you just don't mess with them, you if you don't mess with them, they're not going to break. At least shouldn't break. Sometimes they do break. Like oh yeah, the home internet goes down. Like oh well,
Mhm.
but yeah. I think that the constant tinkering of it, which I barely tinker with my servers nowadays. Um, I used to fix a lot more servers. I used to fix a lot more things on my servers than I do now.
Mm. Mhm.
Nowadays it's just oh yeah, I update my servers every couple well every 2 weeks or so, and yeah, just to keep the security of it up to date.
Yeah, okay, okay, makes sense.
Just
And
general
mm,
advice. So what they say, I guess the sysadmins, use public key authentication, private public key on SSH and stuff. That's what I do.
mhm.
It, I have never gotten a bot who, and there's several like thousands of them over a week that try attacking like a cloud server.
Mm.
But they really just try attacking the low hanging fruit, like I don't know, having password authentication on SSH with a password of 12345.
Mm.
But I have mitigated that and changed the passwords accordingly and everything. So
Okay, okay. Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, yeah, you don't want to have those vectors of attack for sure. Other things like, you told me other things you would like to talk about. For example, you mentioned art, and I am interested. Like, is art connected to, for example, architecture, or is
Yes.
art in a more broader sense? Yeah, so please tell me more.
Yeah, it's related to architecture mainly. I have
Hmm.
been, getting into drawing and trying to learn how to draw, like, things just in general because, uh, one thing I'll say about this, though, is when you focus on one thing specifically, when it comes to drawing, or that could be, I guess, possibly life in general, um, like, I'm trying to draw basically everything.
Mm.
I don't want to focus specifically on architecture because then I have this limited view of drawing, and I only know how to draw architecture.
Mm.
If I draw everything, then I have a much more rounder experience and much more rounder knowledge that I can apply to several other things that I am trying to draw. Like, I don't know, I may ultimately face like architecture down the line. Oh, you got to draw a tree.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, obviously I'm going to try drawing a tree now, not just a skyscraper in like New York or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
yes.
then
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, and then my projects on Blender, which again I've been doing for several years now. That's just I've mainly focused on the artistic side of things because Blender you can get really creative in it,
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
and just most of the buildings I do don't are not necessarily from scratch. Like what I use is some floor plans I find online to the related project. Like I oftentimes stumble upon them using Divisar, which is an architecture magazine,
Okay.
and then I combine like what the kind of mood I want on it. It's called like a mood board. This one program called PureRef, which is allows you to take like images from like Pinterest or like other images on the internet just to try and create an overall vibe
Hmm.
in the building that you're trying to achieve. So
Oh, okay. Sounds very interesting. So all of your artistic endeavors are within the context of Blender, or do you do things on paper, for example,
yeah,
like
that's
on
what I meant with
canvas
drawing. Yeah,
or whatever?
yeah. Just I have a sketchbook that I draw on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As a means as another activity to get off my computer because I
Uh-huh.
don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be constantly doing everything on my computer.
Yeah. Good, good, good. And do you have any specific kind of influences right now, like I don't know, like trends in drawing slash painting, or do you just do whatever you feel like?
I just do whatever I feel like. I don't know. If you ask me what the correct term right now is, I have
Mm,
no idea.
okay.
I basically like I metaphorically speaking, I live under a rock. I
Mm,
don't really follow news. The news I get is from my family,
mm,
because they just tell me.
hmm.
But yeah, I just don't really follow those kind of things. So
Yeah, which is fine. Of course, there is nothing wrong with that. And actually, that also connects to the social media thing and so on. Like, of course, knowing a lot of things about what is happening out there ultimately conditions your emotions. Like, oh, something is happening on the other side of the country. Like, it doesn't affect me in any way, but now I worry about it anyway.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, of course, having that, but specifically in the context of art, um, at least at this stage, of course, it helps to just follow your curiosity wherever it leads you.
Yeah, pretty much. I find that some books on art in general are like really useful. Like one I'm reading right now is drawing on the right side of the brain,
Mm,
which basically has more of a scientific approach to drawing and trying to trick the brain into using the right hemisphere of the brain instead of the left, because the left hemisphere, from what I've researched, is mainly for thinking, while the right hemisphere is a lot more for creative
mm.
endeavors like drawing or art or whatever you're trying to be creative in. So
So this one is about using more the right hemisphere. So basically tapping into your creativity.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, the book talks about doing like, and it's funny, an upside down drawing
Ah.
where you just draw like a like I just
Mm-hmm.
draw like Stravinsky. I don't know who that guy is, but it
Mm,
just says, oh yeah, draw this dude in the book.
mm,
Draw it upside down, and then like 45 minutes later, I turn it upright,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like, wow, I drew this. It's very interesting actually. Just how like because when I was younger, I did not do the best with drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just as I'm learning more with this book and stuff, yeah, you just really need to get yourself into, I guess, in the flow, using the right more the right hemisphere of the brain
Mm-hmm.
to draw things like that. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, applying like basic principles like perspective, shading, lighting, you know, um, those kind of things. So,
Yeah, yeah, which of course are kind of the basics, but are not that
mhm,
easy to practice on, like to be
of
good at
course,
rather.
mhm. Yeah, that's something I'm learning. So,
Mm-hmm.
by no means I'm good at drawing, but it's just something I find fun to do.
Mm.
Um, I'm learning for my future, possibly within architecture. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you think there is any difference between artistic minded drawing and architecture minded drawing, like because you were telling me earlier that I don't want to just be seeing things through the prism of architecture, so what do you think is the difference there?
Well, it's I was saying that because I just think that if you draw one thing, you're going to be missing out on the principles of drawing, which allows you
Mm.
to draw other things. Regarding the artistic drawing compared to like architecture drawing, I just simply don't know enough about the architecture drawing side of things. I have drawn some architecture,
Mm-hmm.
but it has been more creative in a sense. It not like, oh yeah, you have a client and you're supposed to you have a description provided by the client and you're supposed to follow that description with the drawing you're trying to create. And like the drawing is supposed to be like a basic mock-up for the client to possibly envision that whatever that future building should look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, of course. I guess also that sort of thing comes later. Like at this stage, you are building up the skills,
Mhm.
and
Correct.
eventually you piece those together into that kind of prototype.
Mhm. Yeah.
And how does it work exactly with practicing on that? Like, is there like a natural progression, like maybe like a book and then a second book and the third book, or do you just have to do different disciplines and then piece them together yourself?
I I mean, I would say that once, and again, I'm not experienced at all, so take
Mm-hmm.
this with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say that once you've learned the basics of drawing or the basic principles, I think and actually like apply them to things like I don't know, drawing a desk or a water bottle or a tree or whatever, like anything around you. Um, you can then like apply that further on with different medias of art like painting or I guess maybe programming or but just I'm talking about the more traditional side of uh, artistic hobbies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you can apply the basic concepts of drawing to those eventually,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Okay, yeah, it makes perfect sense, of course. And what about the engineering side? Because architecture stands on the intersection of this
Mhm.
purely artistic form of expression, and then the engineering side of things. So when it comes to the engineering side of things, what is like the current market like, or the current sentiment like? Like, are we having AI do this sort of stuff now? Like, where are we on this front?
I don't fully know about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's maybe AI is being used for it. I have heard of some architects using AI. Um, but me personally, like I just experimented with this program called Hermes Agent the other day,
mm.
which is maybe you've heard of OpenClaw before.
Doesn't ring a bell. No.
Okay, it's basically like it's a harness. They call it harness for AI agents to control like server infrastructure or just do things on a computer for you.
Hmm.
It, I just have not found any specific use case for it. It's
Mm.
cool. It has a lot of hype and everything, but you're also ultimately trusting a lot on these AIs, the companies behind them, and I just like AI could manage my servers for me, but I just don't feel comfortable doing that and
Mm-hmm.
trusting
Mm-hmm.
them,
Mm-hmm.
even if I place restrictions on them. Um,
Sure, sure. Which of course raises
but
another question. Like, if you were to trust
yeah.
an AI service provider with
Mhm.
your data effectively, well, why not trust, Google and friends? Like, where do you
Yeah,
draw the line there?
exactly. Yeah, uh, going back to architecture, I don't know about the
Mm-hmm.
math side of things, the art engineering, but
Mm-hmm.
from what I know, you just have to be relatively good at math to do architecture,
Mm-hmm.
to pursue architecture. Um, but it's not necessarily, from what I hear at least, full on engineering. Oh, like you're trying to program or engineer something from scratch. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a bit of both from both worlds. Like, and from what I hear from people who do like who took an architecture degree, but then are like, I'll take a different degree
Mm.
because architecture is such a generalistic degree. You can go toward more of the artistic side of things, like I don't know, graphic design, or go toward the engineering side of things, related to
I
math or
see.
physics or whatever. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. I see. And maybe it's too early for you to know, but do you have any inkling of what you would prefer among those two paths?
oh, the artistic side of things.
Yeah,
It's
because
interesting because it's like the more technical side of it. I I do a bit of programming. By no means I'm a programmer. I just do. I'm comfortable in Bash and stuff. So like I know my way around the infrastructure. It's more technical stuff, but I also find myself very interested in the artistic side of things too. But I find overall more enjoyment in the artistic side of things than the technical side of things. So.
yeah, yeah, of course, makes sense, makes sense. And the thing is that eventually these are not mutually exclusive. Like, you will pick one path because, well, formally you have to specialize on something, but you could still
Mhm.
be learning the other thing uh, beyond the confines of any formal training, as you have already done anyway.
Yeah, mhm. I mean, you do use both in architecture. Architecture is,
Hmm.
of course, a separate degree, but yeah, you can take either one of those paths in the future if decidedly, oh, you don't like architecture for whatever
Hmm.
reason.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, but also what I have in mind, like, is like, let's say you commit to architecture now, and eventually you go into graphic design or interior
Mhm,
design or whatever. But of course, that's like the formality of it, like the formal studies. But you could still be playing around, let's say, and learning how to program, and you have
mhm.
your own applications and stuff. And of course, that will feed into whatever you do formally.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I find that like there's, I guess, in some companies they have a what they call a technical artist,
Mm.
which is an artist, but also using the programs they use, like I don't know, Blender, for instance, that artists will create add-ons for Blender to speed up the workflow. And like like why I program really is automation. I love automation. Like that's why I use NixOS on my servers and stuff, because it's just easier to automate stuff on there. But I also use Bash for like scripts I use, like I don't know, to well, I don't know if I should say this because it might demonetize the video. But
No, I don't monetize them anyway, so I don't
okay,
care.
yeah, to download YouTube videos.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's
it,
good.
it yeah.
So, of course, doing that, and you do that because it's easier for you to keep an archive, or view them at your own pace, or I guess view them without distractions.
It's the distractions part mainly,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess the archive thing is something I'll get into a little later,
Mm-hmm.
which I recently, like very recently, started doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just I think archiving things on the internet is really really important, especially with things like link rot and the inevitable, I don't know, dead internet theory that some people call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that the well, most of the websites I see on a search engine, like if I just do some generalistic search, I see, oh yeah, this blog is entirely generated by AI. Why? And then you have like Google Gemini, who indexes these AI blog posts. At what point, what is true and what is false? Because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know anymore. If
Mm-hmm.
everything's written by AI and everything is provided to me by AI, like I don't know anymore.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's a very difficult problem in practice, and the thing is that at some level you cannot trust. Like the same, of course, was true also in the past with journalists, because you would have to trust their
Mhm.
integrity. Well, of course, many journalists have zero integrity. They are unscrupulous. Of course, they will
Mhm.
say that the journalistic ethics, blah blah blah. They will pay lip service to that, but we
Mhm.
know, of course, in practice that people are people, and some of them are honest and some are not.
Yeah, and I think that's why like people have incentives when they regularly work. Like for example, if you're a waiter at a restaurant, you have the incentive to be kind, to be
Mm.
nice, and to provide a good service. Else, you're probably not going to get a good tip,
Mm.
and then you're going to therefore make less money. There's an incentive there. If we
Correct.
didn't have incentives in the world, then I guess everyone would care less about being kind, whatever. So.
Yeah, correct. And the incentives really go a long way. And
Mhm.
basically, the field of economics, insofar as it concerns human behavior, ultimately it's checking, okay, how do people respond to incentives? Like, simplifying
Mhm.
now, but a big part of economics is that.
Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So, tell me about archiving then. So you mentioned that you wanted to comment on it. So yeah, tell me
Yeah. It's
what is it about
so
specifically?
I from my this is probably going to get a little bit political here, but
No problem on my end. So no worries.
yeah, it's what I've been hearing from my mom and stuff. But this is like again, this is like my parents and other friends of mine, um, who use social media to catch up on news, which therefore provided they have a biased output on it, and then they feed that biased output to me, which so I have to be extremely careful about that. But what they've been telling me is like, oh yeah, there's this one guy in the U.S. government who's been like lying about the coronavirus vaccine and stuff. And I'm like, hmm, okay, that's interesting. And it just thought bring back the thought like of this another blog post I read by Joshua
Mm.
Blaze.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You've talked to him before. I
mm-hmm,
watched that video.
mm-hmm,
He's a
mm-hmm.
great guy. And it it reminded me of that, and just like how much of the internet is again true or false.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember because I've done like some research on it last year, but I haven't really cared about it. it brought up the idea of this one program that's called Kiwix. And my home internet recently went down. Um, and I just thought to myself, so with these series of events, how am I going to be able to reassure myself that I read an article and I want to reread it again like 6 months from
Mm,
now? How am I going to be able to be sure that it's going to be there? Like
mm,
the author's website could just disappear at some point. Like I was a couple months ago researching some stuff online, and um, this one lady had a great website, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I check back a couple weeks later, and her website is gone.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
gone.
it
And then
happens.
it doesn't have any Internet Archive links either, like any snapshots or whatsoever,
Mm,
unfortunately. And that just got me thinking. So I'm going to use this one program called Kiwix. And Kiwix, I'm getting into that now, is a program that is fully FOSS, free software, that allows you to download these archives that they host publicly, and you can just keep them on any hardware you want, like a USB flash drive or something like that, and you can access them online whenever you want. I was like, dang, this is really really cool.
mhm,
And it takes like these archives, like the entirety of Wikipedia, for instance, and it converts them into like a Zim format. Maybe you heard of ZimWiki before. I'm not
no, no.
particularly fond of it, but it basically has a certain format that you can just download. It's just one file, and using Kiwix, you can convert it into something that's actually readable by a web browser using Kiwix
Mm,
Serve,
mhm,
the command line option, or command rather,
mhm,
or you use the desktop app and you can just browse Wikipedia whenever you want by yourself, um, without any risk of the internet whatsoever, or Wikipedia page disappearing, which has happened before plenty of times.
mhm,
And that's something I find great about it. And then I also um, I borrowed some code from Joshua from
mhm,
his Emacs config, and I found this one little file he created with downloading several things like Spotify music and YouTube videos, and I was specifically mainly interested in the article part, and I was like, oh, this is really really cool.
mm,
So I took those e-list functions and bit of tinkering, I plugged that into Denote, and
mhm,
I now have something that just I can, using EWW, which is also something I recently started using.
mhm.
Great, surprisingly great web browser. You can do a
Yeah,
lot with it.
yeah.
Um, I have a link, like I press W to copy the link to my clipboard, and then I just do download media in the MX command line menu. Um, and then it just downloads it into a folder on my system, and I have a PDF version of whatever article I'm reading, and I can move that to whatever device I want, which is fantastic.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Of course, that's great. It also, of course, connects to minimalism in a slightly different way here, where
Hmm.
many websites have a bunch of garbage on them, like a
Yes.
lot of bling that doesn't translate to PDF nicely.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, do you really need all that nonsense? Can you not have just a standard HTML page, like properly formatted, which will also help for this case, among many other
Mhm.
uses?
Oh yeah, yeah. I I'm amazed, like whenever I do see like a standard HTML website with like very little JavaScript. I'm like, wow, there's finally a website that I've encountered that does not have so much JavaScript. Like YouTube is particularly one that's very, very heavy of JavaScript.
Mm,
And I think one great way to circumvent that is to download YouTube videos for one, if you want to archive them, but
mhm,
also to use something like MPV,
yeah.
which can plug into something called the YTDLP,
Mhm.
and they can work together to just stream the videos without all the distractions and the JavaScript heavy website
Mhm.
into this one nice, beautiful media
Yeah,
player.
exactly. It runs locally. It's great. There is
Yeah,
nothing of a sidebar to speak of. No
yeah, exactly.
distractions
Yeah,
whatsoever. I think VLC also does that. I haven't used it in
I
a very long time, but I think you just paste the URL and it works.
yeah, I don't know, but I don't. I
Mhm.
think it works with
Mm.
regular like direct media links. I don't know about YouTube because YouTube is well,
Mhm. Correct. Correct. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the point stands, and of
Mhm,
course, it's good for archiving purposes, and it's
mhm.
also good for avoiding distractions, like both work here.
Yeah. Like I have my own little website that I recently just brought up on a server. It was just like a little blog. I don't do that much blogging yet because
Hmm.
time and stuff, but it's just a super simple website. You know, no JavaScript. It's using something that's called a Hugo, which is um, a static. It takes Markdown and then converts
Hmm.
it into static HTML.
Hmm.
So it's nice. That's like the current workflow I have for my personal website. I know you use Jekyll. That's
Yes,
what I
yes.
looked in the source code of your website. So.
Hmm. It's a technical decision I made
Mhm,
in 2016 before even switching to Linux. So at the time, I wasn't technical at all, right? So I
mhm,
didn't know anything, and I was using this WordPress, self-hosted WordPress, which I somehow managed to set up. And then I was like, no, this is too busy for me. Like WordPress, of course, is a powerhouse, but for me, it's
oh
like,
yeah.
I'm just a single guy with an opinion, or many opinions
Mhm,
and strong opinions. But I don't really need all those plugins and SEO optimizations and do this and
mhm,
forms and marketing campaigns and email driven sales or whatever. I'm like,
mhm,
just give me a page. I want to publish stuff. So eventually I found the Jekyll and I went with that. And now, because of course my website is truly massive, like I have over 1,000 publications. I write basically every day. Uh, I'm like, I won't even bother to migrate. I'm like, Jekyll is the best thing ever.
okay. Yeah. It, it doesn't support natively org files, which is a little disappointing. But
I know,
org
I know.
supports there's the org export function, which is really really useful.
Mhm, mhm.
That you can simply use. So
Yeah, yeah. But what I'm saying is that because I dread the fact
yeah,
of ever migrating, Jekyll is the best. Like, it's
yeah, I
untouchable.
understand. Yeah.
Of course, that granted, org is very good. Of course, I use org,
Mhm,
but it's also not necessary. Again, because that's another thing which again connects to minimalism and a general point now, not specifically to what you have mentioned, which is like many times we get distracted by implementation details. Like I see these articles, this kind of article from time to time, which is like, well, I wrote this very elaborate workflow for publishing blog posts, and I even
mhm.
wrote my own static site generator. It's the best thing ever. And after 3 months, I don't have any articles. And I'm like, my friend, you're putting the cart before the horse. First, write, I don't know, 50 articles, and then you can optimize
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I mean, I open up an org file in my in in my website folder, the Git folder, and I just open up a new file, write what I want to write, and then I have a little script in the root of the folder that just pushes the HTML content, the generated HTML content using Hugo, to a web server that I have, and yeah, it's just I don't know, it's super simplistic.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Me, I remember the experience when I first moved from WordPress to Jekyll, because in WordPress you have to log into the backend of WordPress, and at the time at least, maybe now they have changed it, but at the time at least you had to log to the backend. You had this HTML form, and you could switch between the HTML version and the rich text version or whatever. it was very hard to
Mhm.
reason about, and you had like approximately 100 fields to fill in or whatever. Whereas now it's like you just write plain text, you
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
git
it's
commit and you're done.
yeah, it's great. I love
Hmm.
static HTML because of that. I have experienced WordPress before. It's not good for
Hmm.
like a basic blog website. If you're having an entire company, like e-commerce and stuff, then I totally understand. Like WordPress, you definitely need WordPress for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But for something like a blog, you don't.
Hmm.
It's just a pain in the butt. It's
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Other things you do, like on this, like a similar wavelength, like where you want to assume control, but also it kind of helps you avoid distractions and minimalism and all that.
Yeah, Emacs. it's
It's
I've
the
been
distraction to kill all distractions, maybe.
yes, yes. Yes, we spend 24/7 getting no sleep, iterating on our Emacs config. No,
Exactly.
I don't do that obviously, but um yeah, if I found Emacs back in 2024, November 2024, where I was like, man, why do all note-taking applications just suck?
Mm.
Because a lot of them to me, you and again, because I like 2 months prior, I started self-hosting, and I was like, hey, I want extra privacy here.
Mm.
And I just wanted to have something fully under my control. And then I stumbled across this one website, which I use for like a lot of like baseline like privacy stuff. It's called Privacy Guides,
Mhm.
privacyguides.org. And they have this like little page, this like note taking tools, and like some of them were like, most of them were browsing based websites, and um, they they had this one local notebook little feature. They said org mode. I was
Oh.
like, okay, cool. I'm gonna check out org mode, and I found this one YouTube video um, from this one guy that I also saw you talk to before. I forgot his name.
Mm.
Um, maybe uh, if I
So,
search up org mode real quick.
mhm,
I'm pretty sure I'm going to encounter him somewhere.
mhm.
Um, my internet's a little slower now,
No, no, no
but
problem.
okay. Well, it's yeah. YouTube is super JavaScript heavy. I'm not going to do that on YouTube.
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry. Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
You can
but
always send me
yeah,
if you find it. You can always
uh-huh.
send it to me. I can add
Yeah,
it in the description.
no problem. Anyway, so this one guy who made it org mode video, I was like, okay, cool. So and I found it nice. It's just, and this was before I had known Markdown actually, surprisingly. Um, so I just completely avoided Markdown entirely. I don't know why. Um, so yeah, I just thought it was okay, really cool. And then I downloaded the program to use org mode, which is Emacs, and I'm like, what is this disgusting white screen? Like, and then there was this entire like 15-part series that I watch on YouTube, how to use org mode. I'm like, huh, this is very, very powerful. And I just kind of from there started using it. I started off with one massive org mode file. I was like a couple months in, for my note taking stuff for school. And I was like, this is a rather a large file. And it was not until I found Denote, I also stumbled upon org Rome, but I was like, I don't like, I had limited knowledge of it. So I didn't necessarily like the database dependency with it. Now I experimented with org Rome. I'm like, it's okay. I don't necessarily like the org capture everything with it. I prefer just to have a dedicated buffer for my note taking. Um, so I stumbled upon Deno and I just started using it from there. And it's been really, really nice so far. Um, I you mentioned at the top of the manual that denote is a file naming scheme, not necessarily just for notes. And it was not until I recently discovered the full power of that, and which is
Yeah,
mind blowing. Like it was just like a realization. Like,
yeah.
wow, I can actually use this for my PDF notes too. Because like I don't know LaTeX, so
Mm-hmm.
I just take notes on a tablet and then I export them to PDF and store them on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was like, wow, that's really really cool. Because previously I was using org attach,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I don't like org attach at all. Like either you have all the org files, sorry, the files you're trying to attach to like PDFs in one directory. Like I don't know, I have a in my notes directory like a math subdirectory for all my math notes, and you attach them accordingly with a name. But I'm like, this is not really useful for searching outside of Emacs.
Exactly. That's the key
And
part.
then yeah, and then there was another feature in org attach where you could connect them using UUIDs, but it would create these crazy subfolders with these tags or IDs and stuff. I was like, how am I again? How am I going to find this on a regular file system? Like, I don't want to just access it in org mode in Emacs. So it turns out that you can also rename
Hmm?
regular files with the no. And then you mentioned the newest org version, which I guess came by pure coincidence, like in great timing, which supports custom links, and I can just link my PDF notes to my org notes without any issues and store them wherever I want in the directory. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't
yeah.
have a dependency with org mode. Yay! So
And
yeah,
that's the
that
key part, really.
yeah.
That's the key part because, of course, me, I use Emacs basically for everything. Right?
Mhm.
But the thing is, I don't want to have the equivalent of what we talk about in other contexts of the vendor lock-in. You know? Even though it's
Yeah.
free
Mhm.
software or whatever. Like, if I am in a situation where either I have abandoned Emacs or I am on a computer that is like a basic Unix shell. I don't
Mhm.
want to be like, okay, where is my org mode real quick so that I can go, 5 levels deep into the UID. I'm like, that doesn't work for me. I need just
Yeah.
grep or find. Like that's all I have, or
Mhm.
maybe ls or whatever.
Yeah, and it also works super duper nicely with things like sync thing, which just work amazingly well with just plain text. I'm sure it would work fine with org roam with the database. You know, I guess every time you create a new file on your org roam directory, you just attach that to like a hook that will do a command just to sync up the changes with the database. But I don't want that extra dependency. I just want to sync my files. And syncing is really like combining with Deno with just the basic plain text files. It's amazing. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of
and then
course.
I use that along, as I mentioned, with the custom elist functions that I borrowed from Josh, Joshua, for archiving. And I just every time it finished downloading it, the article, I just it just prompts me, hey, what do you want to rename this note, this
Mhm.
PDF as? And then I just type in the name, and then I don't have to worry about the spacing, the unique identifiers, or whatever or like that. I just don't have to worry about the name. It's amazing, like truly. One last thing I'll mention. One thing that is infuriating to me in Linux, if you want to like do any kind of file operations on the command line, with a file with spaces, you have to put it inside quotation marks.
Yeah,
I just don't like that.
yeah, it's a
I
pity.
prefer to, yeah, I just prefer just to have the denote naming scheme on the file, and it's just plain. You don't have to wrap it around quotation marks. So it's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. That was basically my consideration as well. It's like I have all these files they have all these random names that people use. They are,
Mhm.
of course, conflicting with each other as schemes, or there are no schemes at all, like, basically random stuff. And I'm like, okay, I know that this is what Oliver sent me, and this is what I got from the other website. Blah, blah. 3 months from now, I don't remember any of that, and I'm like, okay, where is the thing? And you cannot find it.
Mhm.
So having a file naming scheme, I think, is essential. Of course, whether it is the denote file naming scheme or another one, I think that's a secondary issue. The real issue is that you want to have a scheme in place which enforces consistency, so that if you do that over time, consistency begets predictability. Because it's
Oh
always
yeah.
the same. Like this is what I was doing
Yeah.
5 years ago. It's still the same. Like it will be the same 5 years from now.
Yeah, which I wanted to ask, do you, because I read in the manual that you not only use it for your note files, but you also use it for like videos and in articles and stuff, PDFs. Do you use it for music too?
Yep. So
Really?
I do, yes. Because the thing is that many, like the traditional approach with music before metadata became a thing, which I think
Mhm.
was a step in the wrong direction. I liked
Hmm.
the old approach with music, where it was like, there is the folder, and then there are the files, like let's say MP3 or whatever. They are the files, and then they have a specific convention, like it's the artist and maybe the composer, the year,
Mhm.
whatever, the title of the song. Something like that, where basically it could work anywhere without any kind of tool to edit metadata.
Okay.
But the thing is, nowadays, I find that much of my music is not in the context of albums. Like, uh,
Hmm.
album is not really a thing anymore. So I'm like, you know what? I just like this song from this performer, and I'm like, okay, I will get it. And what matters is that it is within the genre or the theme I am interested in. So if it's a part of another wider structure, it's basically not of interest. Of
Yeah.
course, if I download, let's say, if I care about and buy or whatever, like from a specific folder or album, maybe I can name them accordingly. But generally, that's not a concern
Mhm.
for me. For
Yeah.
example, there
It's
is this indie group like
yeah.
rock musicians, Greek rock musicians. So I bought their albums, and I'm like, okay, the first thing I want to do is remove the album part, because for me that like when I'm listening to it, I'm not thinking, I'm listening to this album now. I'm thinking, okay, this is the song, and that's all I care about.
Mhm. Yeah. For me, like what my kind of setup right now is I have this old phone that I just use basically for exclusively listening to music. It's offline. It doesn't have like a SIM card or anything like that. Um, and the application I use on there is VLC because VLC has a very nice Android client, surprisingly.
Okay.
Um, and the metadata in that case is actually really useful. Like I have bought a couple albums from a couple artists, like a Bandcamp, for example, and I just don't really find the denote naming scheme to be that useful in that specific
No,
case.
no. In that case, it would be
Yeah.
counterproductive, even.
Mhm.
Yes.
So that's why I wanted to ask because
Mhm.
I also read it like you don't really listen to like well, I guess most people do nowadays is they will listen just to music in the background, like with whatever work they're doing.
I used to
I
do it.
yeah,
Yeah, but I quit. Yeah.
I I did the same thing actually. Um, as a nod to kind of like your blog post to it, because like it combined with the idea of another book I was reading, which is called like Deep Work, which really just tries to focus on like concentration of work and minimizing distractions. So it connects to digital minimalism. Um, I just stopped listening to music ultimately, and like I storage is expensive, uh, and I did used to have a lot of like pirated music, where I used to listen to a lot of, but now like my music library is very small, which means I have a lot more storage. But also, I've noticed that when I'm actually like, I still listen to music, on like a weekly basis, but I do it at a dedicated time where I'm doing nothing else. And I find that I like the music. I find I'm a lot more enjoyable to listen to than when I'm just constantly listening to the same thing in the background, or some playlists or some radio, whatever. Like I know like a lot of people do that nowadays with Spotify and stuff, but I just, yeah, I'm like, I recently tried that while I'm just doing some work on my computer, and it's a lot harder for me now than it used to be to concentrate on the work I'm doing with music than without music. So
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. The thing with having music as background,
mhm.
playing in the background, is that at least how it was in my experience is that if it was a familiar tune, basically it would disappear into the background. But if
Mm.
it was an unfamiliar tune, it would come to the foreground and I wouldn't be able to do work. So I'm like, look, if it's something I can basically play in my head, it's almost as if it is not there. So why am I even playing it? And if it's something that it's new and it's distracting me, why am I even playing it? So I'm
Yeah.
like, so I'm like, yeah, exactly. Let me commit to it rather than
Mhm.
having it in the background.
Yeah, it's I have noticed that too. But another thing I've noticed is when I do listen to even familiar music, like music I've listened to for years, um, it's I just tend to start like humming toward it, like humming with it, and then just like I get distracted over time. Like if I'm trying to program here, I'm trying to solve a problem, or which Blender actually does have.
I extend the emac.
Yeah, yeah. Or like Blender, where I'm trying to solve like this piece of like geometry, like how do I necessarily fix this thing, and like if does this look good here or whatnot. That just distracts me,
Mm.
and it's funny. I find that I've memorized most songs I listen to, so I can quite literally just play them in my head and just enjoy them. It's a bit weird of a concept, but I don't know if that has happened to you. Um,
Mm.
has that ever happened to you actually?
It does happen, but not
Mhm,
that frequently. Like it happens from time to
mhm,
time where a song just occurs and I can, sing along. But generally, no. Generally, it doesn't happen. For me, what also helped me, of course, I stopped playing the music passively and
mhm,
listening to it actively. But what also helped me on the actively side of things is to commit to a project of interpreting the song. And for me, it's not really that, okay, I have unearthed, some deeper truth, which maybe I do, but that's beside the point. For me, what really matters is that now I really pay attention to the lyrics and to the music as well. And I'm like, okay, what is this about? Like, I have been listening to this song for, let's say, 20 years. And now it's the first time I actually pay attention to the lyrics. And I'm like, wow,
mhm.
it was right in front of me.
Yeah, it's I sometimes it says my microphone appears to be noisy. Is it?
Hmm. I don't know. Yeah, no,
Okay.
it doesn't
Um,
say anything here.
anyway, I I sometimes re-listen to the songs I listened to like a decade ago.
Hmm.
And I find myself, huh, why are these songs so inappropriate? And why did I used to listen to these as a 6-year-old? I don't necessarily understand why, but I just enjoy the tune of it. Whatever. Yeah.
Well, of course, that's another thing. Yeah. The thing is, of course, with the inappropriate thing is that, well, I don't know about your case specifically, but in my case at least, I remember very well saying the most nasty things at a very young age.
Yeah, I used to say some nasty things when I was younger too. Yeah, albeit I'm much younger than you, but
Hmm.
like I still have previous life experience. But
Hmm.
yeah, I used to say a lot worse things than I do now.
Good.
Just language wise,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
especially. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. The thing is that as a kid, of course, you say you spit out vitriol or whatever, but you don't
Mhm,
actually know what the words mean. So it's like, well,
mhm.
I just say what I heard,
Yeah, yeah.
and maybe I'm a little bit edgy.
And sometimes like I was a little edgy when I was younger too, where I made this justification of saying the F word sometimes. In I'm sorry to the French people. And apparently, seal is very similar to how the English F word is pronounced. The
Ah,
French word for seal.
the French word for seal. Okay, yeah. So now I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
it's
Okay, okay.
the animal. I mean, the
Yeah, yeah,
animal.
yeah. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently that it's pretty similar. I would need to hear an actual French person say it, of course, but that's besides the point. I use it as a justification to say the F word sometimes.
Okay, great.
I don't know why.
You're into
It's
marine
just some.
biology.
I don't know. Languages are very interesting in a sense, where like some of them derive from English. A lot of them actually derive from English, the modern version of languages, and some of them are just have the weirdest words in the language. Like Polish sometimes has weird words, which is something like I am currently trying to learn, because like I have a lot of free time and I want to learn another language to speak to like my Polish folks and stuff, because I am Polish.
On
Um,
both sides or one side?
yes, both sides. Yes.
Hmm.
Um, so and I've grown up. I grew up entirely in my life in America, and I want to learn some other language than English. So
Like
yeah.
my impression of people from America is that usually they only speak English, and
Mhm.
maybe they speak a second language, which is the language of
It's
their ancestors, but not very well.
yeah,
Mm.
I think that is typically the case, but also Spanish
Mm.
especially very, very popular. So that's like if you're trying to get into US and getting a job, I think Spanish could be like a really, really useful language,
Mhm.
to interact with a lot of Spanish people, which a lot of Spanish people here actually only speak Spanish.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but I also noticed that a lot of places like I don't know, some fast food restaurants, which I don't eat junk food by the way.
Hmm.
I quit that a long time ago. I eat only healthy stuff now.
Good, good.
Yeah, but like sometimes I see it at like restaurants like Portillo's or McDonald's or um, Arby's or whatnot. I don't think Arby's. But like some restaurants will have like a Spanish translation of the English menu.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Sometimes it depends on the restaurant. Sometimes they just don't have it at all. But yeah, it. I see that more and more that like stores, for example, also they have Spanish translation for the Spanish people, that are coming into the U.S. So
Yes, yes, makes perfect sense, of course. And I guess that's more noticeable in certain parts of the country, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely like I don't really know too well the other
Hmm. Hmm.
parts of the country, like in some states like Atlanta, or sorry, not Atlanta, Georgia. Georgia.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily know whether they have like a lot of um, Spanish people going there or whatnot.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's heavily related to politics, like whether you're like for
Hmm.
the immigrants coming in or not.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
But
course, of course, of
yeah,
course. It's a divisive issue, naturally.
oh yeah, definitely. Um, but
But
yeah,
mhm.
it depends where they're heading, and
Mhm,
uh,
mhm, mhm.
so
But anyway, the point was about languages, which is
yeah.
generally speak. So of course, even the Spanish speakers, basically
Mhm,
they speak Spanish and maybe a little bit of English, but
mhm.
generally you don't have this phenomenon, which is more common in Europe, where people are like speaking like three or four languages, and that's like not even
Oh,
that impressive, like there are guys who
huh,
speak like seven languages, and it's like, okay, but
huh.
you're just showing off at this point. I
Yeah.
mean.
How many languages do you know how to speak? Because I saw recently on your blog that you started writing. well, actually, in French.
Mm-hmm. So I want to. So I speak Greek, of course, that's my mother tongue.
Mhm,
English. I know French, but I need to practice a lot to bring it up to speed. I also know
mhm,
Spanish, which I don't want to start this project again now because I want to do the French thing properly.
mhm,
But I know Spanish relatively well. Like if I listen to Spanish speakers, I can understand a lot. If I read like a formal publication, let's say a newspaper, I can understand most of it. Of course, if it's slang or whatever, I won't understand anything.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
I also know a little bit of Portuguese and Italian, but I cannot be fluent in them. Like if
Okay.
I hear people talking, I kind of know what they are talking about.
Yeah. I've noticed it's a lot easier to, especially with Polish. Like I often hear my parents speaking Polish. They'll say, "Oh, like, hey Oliver, can you go grab this or something?" I'm like,
Mm.
okay, and I just understand it like without issue in
Mm-hmm.
Polish. They just
Mm-hmm.
speak to me without Polish. But I personally like right now I am learning Polish, but I can't speak or read that much Polish. But I
Mm-hmm.
understand it when someone else is speaking a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
And usually that's the part where once you commit to, of course, listening, but also talking, is the part that you eventually unlock. Like it's like you know the language, but you don't have the muscle, as it were, for it. Like your muscle is not
mhm,
flexible enough, as it were. So
mhm,
you know the
yeah,
moves, but you cannot do them because you are not flexible enough.
yeah. How did you learn like French and Spanish?
So I learned at school. So French I
Okay.
learned at school, and Spanish a bit later as well. I took it as an
Mhm.
elective. But the thing is that I was also working in a context where I was dealing with speakers from different countries, and eventually
Ah,
I
yes.
would listen to it. Mostly
Got
in
it.
tourism, the beginning was in tourism. And
Okay.
it's very funny because, for example, I was working as a bartender for many years. And for example, they have a word in French for peanuts, which is called the cacahuète, right? So to me, it sounds like a very funny
Okay.
word. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm here, doing all this rough work. I've been here for 12 hours already, and now it's cacahuète time. So I'm like, yeah, great. So it's
Okay.
very funny, and I would make jokes with people. Like I would be like, "Okay, so do you also want a grapefruit juice?" And the grapefruit in French is le pamplemousse, and I'm like, "Oh, pamplemousse." So it's of course teasing people,
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
But
What
the
are
thing, the thing with languages is that. Of course, like you can learn them deep and you can study,
Mhm,
art, literature, whatever, right?
mhm.
Uh, but also, I think it makes you more approachable. Like even if you are not a good speaker, even if you show a willingness to speak in that language, it's like you are more endearing. Like people are like, ah, okay, that guy is trying. I like that guy already.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Mhm.
It also depends on the person you're talking to.
Of course. But generally,
Yeah.
people see like, okay, you're putting in some effort. So yeah,
Mhm.
I see. Of course, you're
Yeah.
making mistakes. I can tell
I
you are not a native speaker, but yeah, you
yeah.
are putting some effort. I
I
appreciate
noticed
that.
that yeah, I noticed that there's a lot of, cases in Polish. Well, there's like
Mm,
7 of them, which I'm trying to learn all of them,
of course.
over time, but
Hmm.
like, I'm not necessarily, uh, tr trying to be perfect with the case, like,
Hmm.
I'm not I'm not studying for a language exam. I'm
Mm,
just trying to speak to some Polish people I know.
hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. And
yeah.
do you have any Polish speakers around beside your immediate family, or would it be online?
It would basically just be my family. That's
Mm.
really just it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I have a couple Polish friends in person, but I don't really talk to them too much. So,
Hmm. Hmm. And would you ever consider going on a trip to Europe, to Poland, or maybe even relocating there? Is that an option?
um,
Not permanently
I
there,
heard,
but
yeah,
maybe for
yeah,
a summer
yeah.
or whatever.
I don't really know.
Hmm.
Poland, from what I hear, is insanely expensive. Like just
Oh.
the economy there, especially here.
Hmm.
Um, I guess like I have friends in Poland too. Though I have never traveled to Poland, um, so I don't necessarily know what's like there. But I just do have Polish friends that are part of my family.
Hmm.
Um, that just tell me like, yeah, it's really really expensive here, um, and you probably shouldn't be moving here, because it's just
Hmm.
avocados. Apparently cost like $8 a pound. I'm like, really? Like
Yeah, of
it
course.
costs $1 here each, which is not the worst.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, yeah.
Of course, of course. Certain things will be very
Mhm.
expensive there. Yeah, yeah. If
Oh
you
yeah,
are used to them in America, yeah,
yeah.
like,
And
but
and I
maybe
also
other
heard,
things are cheaper. I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, I also heard that like uh, houses, albeit houses here, most of them like in suburban neighborhoods or, well, minus cities, but there's not too many large cities in the
Mm.
U.S.
Mm.
Um, they're poorly built. I mean, like it could be quite literally defined as paper and sticks.
Oh wow.
It's yeah, they can be built up really really quickly, like in a matter of just a couple months. But then in Poland, they tell me, oh yeah, it's like if you convert like zloty, which is the Polish currency, because they never adopted euros, to the U.S. dollar, it would cost some millions of dollars to build a house there compared to here. Um, but of course, it depends on the area here. Of course, like some areas like near bigger cities are more expensive compared to like the countryside, which is a lot cheaper. Um, but the houses in Poland are made out of brick, and they take several months to settle the brick to stabilize. Um, but I don't know how many hurricanes Poland gets, or natural disasters, but that reassurance of having something a lot more structurally sound is better sounding to me than here with paper and sticks.
Of course, different considerations. Like I haven't heard of Poland being that exposed to hurricanes. And I don't think Europe is that exposed, like the way different parts of the United
Yeah.
States are. So of course they are exposed to the cold. They also have other issues, right? But not hurricanes specifically. But yeah, of course, having a house that is sturdy definitely is reassuring. Maybe the paper
Yeah.
and sticks kind of house is on purpose so that, well, if it's anyway going to be blown away, at least it won't, I don't know,
Yeah.
kill you.
True.
Yeah, like, yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Well, uh,
I don't
like
know. I don't know. You are the architect here. I'm just a guy
I'm,
with a
I'm
block.
not I'm not necessarily an architect.
I know, I know.
I read several books about it, and I have a friend, another friend, who is pretty well versed in architecture. So,
Hmm. No, I
but yeah,
like to
it's
do this thing, like
yeah.
teasing people. Like the other day,
Okay.
I was talking
Yeah.
to somebody who was like, "Well, I just started, like medical school," and I'm like, "Okay, doctor, tell me," you know.
Okay. Yeah, I would say like it's almost the story, the classic children's story of the big bad wolves.
Hmm.
Have you heard of that?
With like
Yeah.
the big bad wolf with the three pigs. That's the one.
Yes, that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Where I think it was the third pig that built the house out of brick, but the bad wolf couldn't blow it away.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's actually, now I don't remember exactly that story, but I think that is a very good point also of what we were saying earlier about independence, and also
Mhm.
uh, you cannot just rely on your savings kind of thing, or your fortress for that matter. You also have to
Oh
have
yeah.
skills beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's I I have thought about like with building my own house and stuff, like if I'm going to become an architect, I might as well design my own house in the future. Like
Yes.
I find the concept of like some people have like tiny homes, which are
Mm.
like, and I don't really know the metric system too well, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to use the imperial system, but like 250 square feet
Mm-hmm.
of space, which is pretty small compared to the average house, which
Okay.
could be like 2,000 in the U.S.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and you just pack all your stuff in there, and some of them even have it like on wheels, so you could just move around the country if you wanted to, wherever
Oh,
you want to
wow.
go.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
But what
It's
about
basically
regulations? Like you just show
I
up with a house somewhere and people are like, ah, cool. Yeah. Just leave it there.
I would say it's the closest concept of it is an RV.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So, but it's just a tiny house specifically is more custom. Like I've heard of this. There's these two builders who have like a little like YouTube channel, and they just build tiny houses for people. Like I just noticed that they're a lot more custom in a sense,
Mm.
specifically tailored toward that person, than like an RV, which is, oh yeah, you try to fit into
Mm-hmm.
this space, which is
Mm-hmm.
something I actually have noticed in a lot of suburban houses. And every time I see a suburban house, I will look at them in disgust,
Hmm.
uh, simply because like a lot of suburban neighborhoods, they have the same exact houses for every single person. I'm like, hmm. Which I understand it could be pretty expensive to have a house specifically tailored for someone, but at the same time, though, it's just disgusting to me that architecture is heading that direction, and we don't have like the beautiful architecture that we have in like Chicago, New York,
Mm.
Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, of course. Having some personality makes perfect
Mhm,
sense. But yeah, of course, I can understand why they would want to do it at scale.
mhm, yeah, because it's cheap.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just cheap. Yeah,
yeah.
I understand that from that aspect, but uh, I just don't like the concept of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it to me, it's also just a huge waste of space. Like I noticed in like a friend of mine went to Denmark, and he told me that like everything is so close together, you could just travel with a bicycle.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Which of
Yeah.
course, in some cities you
Mm-hmm.
can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess the major cities, but in a lot of places like the suburbs in the U.S., you have to drive by car,
Of course, of
which is
course. It's more spread out there.
yeah, and you have to pay gas. You're polluting the atmosphere and stuff. It's just a mess of sorts. I know there's electric cars and stuff, but how about just hop on a bicycle and just travel to the supermarket that's 5 minutes away? You can't just simply do that in most places in the U.S.
Yeah, correct, correct. And that's a nice thing about having cities that are, and I think we still have a long way to go, but basically that are more in that direction of, okay, let's be more sustainable, let's be more mindful of our consumption patterns. Of course, like having zero carbon footprint, maybe that's not realistic, but minimizing it. Don't do it when it's not necessary.
Yeah, and then like working on like electricity grid to provide more like renewable resources like solar or wind or instead of fossil fuels, for instance.
Yeah, yeah, of course, that's a big one as well. And it's a matter of incentives too, like,
Mhm.
like with politics and big actors, big
Oh,
corporations and interests.
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I think the direction is clear. You want to have more of a renewable energy sources. Fewer, more is better.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I want to ask, how like I know you mentioned in the couple emails that we exchanged with each other, you have like a solar generator for your electricity, but how do you like manage water, for example? Or do you like use like gas or like do you have AC or heating in your home?
So I have solar panels which connect to an inverter. So the inverter is
Mhm.
basically the brains that converts one type of current, continuous current, into the other one, AC, DC. I forget how they're called, right? But anyway, basically current coming from the sun so that it is available for the applications, the house. So the inverter does that, and to the inverter I also connect a battery which I got I think early this year, early January. I forget right now, but I think it was early January. And basically, ever since I got the battery, I have solved my electricity needs. I have electricity all day round. Before
Oh,
that,
nice.
like there was a point, like in before the battery, like around, let's say, New Year's time, and the weeks before that, where I would be on the computer until like 3 p.m. and then I would be without electricity. So I was like, okay, this is really rough. So having that battery really helped. In
Yeah.
terms of heating and AC, I have nothing. Long term, of course, I want to have. I'm not against them, but it's a matter of priorities. Like I have to do things step by step. Build one thing, then do the other thing, then do the third thing. So of course, it's a matter of budget. It's a matter of how much effort I can put in, how much time I have. So I cannot do everything at once, right? And the thing is that it is working. It is working for me. Like what I have done, and generally is of interest to me, is the passive side of things. So the active would be like active cooling, like AC, or active heating, right? The passive side is having better insulation, or arranging the windows and the airflow in such a way so that, well, it naturally cools down the place. Having trees planted in a strategic fashion so that,
Yeah.
for example, the trees that throw their leaves, so that during the winter they allow the sun to pass through, but during the summer they blot out the sun, and again that brings down the temperature. So these sorts of tricks, and I am doing all of that basically.
Yeah, I remember reading on your blog back in January. I read a lot of your blog posts, in case you didn't tell. um, I read in January that you were doing that exact thing, and then like you were planning, like it was like a roadmap that you like,
Hmm.
a little bit of a roadmap that you just
Hmm.
mentioned, like, oh yeah, 5 years down the line with what I want to do with this house.
Yes, yes, yes. And of course, some of those have been delayed because there is this war, the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And of course, there are wars
Oh.
everywhere. But basically, the thing is that the economic crisis has not hit us yet, but it will. Like, and I am like extremely cautious now. So I'm like, you know what? I don't want to spend any money and then have literally zero savings and then be like, okay, I'm screwed. If something happens, I'm in trouble. So I'm like, okay, better not buy this equipment now. Better wait a few months and see how it goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, I am. When it's a situation of uncertainty like that, I prefer to wait.
Yeah. That's what I used to do in those kind of situations is like, oh, well, I probably better consider, buying this thing now. It's very, very important. Yeah.
And of course, like depending, of course, on your needs,
Of course. Yeah.
that is also a good strategy.
Mhm.
Like, for
Mhm.
example, you can say, let's say with AC, right? You can say, of course, having the air conditioning unit ensures that I am at peak levels of productivity during the summer because I
Mhm.
don't get bothered by the heat or whatever, right?
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, that makes it so that I can generate more income, blah, blah, blah. But in my case, it's like, well, I'm not bothered anyway, right? So
Mhm.
I don't worry.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Nice. Cool.
So, any other topics? Anything else you want to discuss? Otherwise, we could, yeah, end it on this note.
Um, I do have a couple questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have you like, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, where you used to self-host WordPress. Have you ever like considered self-hosting before? Because from what I
Hmm.
read on your Emacs page, you have just basically your two computers, which is your laptop and your desktop.
Hmm. Hmm. So I would like to. basically I am a single computer user. Like I have
Mhm.
all the files on one computer, this desktop here.
Mhm.
And if I ever need to do anything on the laptop, I have a flash drive and I copy them on the flash drive and I move them manually, like that. I would like to do it. For me, the problem with any kind of commitment is that, of course, I don't just want to do it opportunistically, like, okay, let me quickly set this thing up based on one blog post I read. I want to actually understand what I'm doing. So I
Mhm.
need to commit, I don't know, 5 hours, 10 hours, I don't know, 5 days or whatever to actually learn the thing inside out and then do it. So I'm like, yeah, I am not doing that now.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
my, of course, it's a strength and the weakness. Like the strength is like, I want to understand things in depth. The weakness is that, well, everything has depth.
Yeah.
So,
If you go deep enough, if you
mhm,
go deep enough, like
mm,
I remember Josh and you during your little
mhm,
talk together, you mentioned like, or I think Josh mentioned, yeah, you could just look at a tree and just sit there for hours admiring its beauty and how it was formed. Like
mhm, mhm.
it's truly amazing, actually. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
but
of course, of course.
I would also say that if like if you go deep enough on something, I feel like it can get political, like for
Mhm,
almost everything.
mhm, mhm. Many things tend to get political for the
Mhm.
practical reason that politics, it's kind of the place of like the confluence of interests. Like eventually, like you may be observing a tree, for example, right? And how can a tree possibly be political, right? And
Yeah.
of course, now you are thinking of it in terms of aesthetics. You are thinking of it in terms
Mhm.
of what kind of organism it is, and you are discerning in it conscience and behavior and all that, right? And you are observing also its connections to the ecosystem, so you understand how it is a factor among the factors of this case you are studying right now. And then eventually you're like, well, but the tree also is something that my forefathers planted here,
Mhm.
and basically they planted the tree knowing that they will not sit under its shade, but they did it mindfully for the next generations, for them to thrive. And now you're talking about politics. Because now you're like,
Yeah.
okay, we have to have a long-term outlook. We have to think in terms of
Oh
sustainability.
yeah.
Therefore, we shouldn't be cutting down the trees willy-nilly, blah, blah, blah. Very quickly, you become a radical just by watching a tree. Like, so be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm only half joking.
Well, no, I believe that actually. Yeah, it definitely
Hmm.
you can definitely go down there.
Hmm. Hmm. The thing is, of
Have
course, the thing is like with politics, and there is this discussion oftentimes, this comment that people make, like, keep politics out of this. And
mhm,
the thing is that at some level, of course, what people do is political. I think that's basically the case. But
mhm,
it's also true that you don't want, let's say we are talking about Emacs, we are talking about some technical detail about the configuration of Emacs, and now you are bringing in
mhm.
politics. And I'm like, okay, let's keep politics out of it, not because technology is apolitical, but because we are not focusing on that right now. So let's
Mhm.
stay on topic. So in that sense, I understand it. But
Yeah.
otherwise, of course, yeah, most things are political ultimately. Like you cannot avoid
I
it.
I think I mean like j- the politics in the US government here, in my
Hmm.
personal opinion about it is it's full of extremists to me. And that might be because I have friends who are either uh, very conservative or they're very liberal.
Hmm.
But I just think that again politics.
Hmm.
I think the government is focusing on the wrong priorities. Because I think there's like so many other issues. Like I don't know, how about companies and surveillance pricing and stuff? Like the entire concept. Like why did we let go of antitrust?
Hmm.
And of
Hmm.
course, I'm not a politician. I don't. I don't follow the news that often. Like again, I just hear it from my
Mm-hmm.
friends and stuff. Um, but it's just to me, politics now is just kind of full of I I don't want to offend anyone, but I would say dumber people who just say, "Oh yeah, I think all the immigrants should be kicked off the U.S. soil." I'm like, I don't think it's just that black and white. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
just entirely dismissing the liberal side of things, for instance,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and like vice versa. It, a lot of people that I've noticed, at least in my friend group, they're very one sided.
Mm-hmm.
They just entirely dismiss the entire side. And if there's a problem, oh yeah, let's just blame that side instead of our side because oh yeah, we're superior than the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think rather, people should take more of a balanced approach and think, okay, think with judgment. Is this actually like the way that we should be thinking about this? Like, or like what precautions can we take? Like what
Mm-hmm.
solutions can there be?
Earlier, we mentioned the key word. We made an aside about economics, and we mentioned the key word, which is incentives. You brought it up, right?
Mhm.
Correctly, I
Yeah.
think. So, uh, think about the benevolent politician, right? So, you go
Mhm.
there, you are a reasonable person, you don't want to mislead anyone, you are not an extremist, like, you are a genuinely kind person, okay?
Mhm.
So, what is your job as a politician from an incentives point of view? To send out a message in return for votes, right? Like what makes you
Yeah.
a politician is the ability to disseminate that message. So think about now the media landscape where the shorter the message, the more viral it is, the more effective it is, right?
Mhm.
So even if you are the most benevolent person, you don't want to mislead anyone, eventually you will be doing. Not because you are bad, not because you are actually dumb, or because you think that others are dumb, but because the structure is such, the incentives are such that well, dumbness prevails. Like the simpler, the better. Like if you give a
Mhm.
nuanced take on anything, like already I am doing it. If you give a nuanced take, you have to talk for several minutes. If you say, you know what,
True.
this is the problem, you're done. One sentence. So in one sentence, like that's a bite-sized message that travels really fast, right? And if you say it with
Mhm.
competence, with confidence rather, maybe pumping on your fist on your chest or whatever, that's super effective. But if you start, adding clauses and exceptions and all that, you are not doing it right. It won't have the same
Mhm.
virality, the same effect. And I think fundamentally, we are victims of our own technology in this regard. Like, we have created a system of incentives and tools like algorithms and all that uh,
Mhm.
that makes us dumber, not because we are actually stupid, but because of how we communicate and what passes through. And then, of course, the filter bubbles amplify that.
Yeah, I have noticed that, especially on like platforms like Facebook and Instagram,
Hmm.
where my friends have these political like reels or I guess whatever they call on YouTube, Facebook, the short form content. I mean, and the algorithm caters toward the whatever they're leaning toward, like so liberal or conservative, and then it's just that constant feedback loop
Hmm.
where they're like, oh, I man, this problem, like I'm going to take such a conservative stance against it because it's
Hmm.
just yeah, it's a major problem because the politician in that video, it's and typically they're like just clipped videos from what I see
Hmm.
uh, of like some like meeting in the Congress or whatever, and like, oh yeah, we should totally do this. And what about all the other context here?
Hmm.
And yeah, it could. I think that is influencing people's opinions. Just focusing on more simplistic things, which I think politics is a lot more complicated than that.
Hmm. Of course,
Unfortunately.
the thing is with politics, and I think maybe like the history of democratic thought has
Mhm.
kind of blurred what I'm about to distinguish between. So there is the politics, as in the public relations side of things, where it's like, well, you have to talk to people, you have to bring them together, you have to organize them, a consensus has to emerge. So all that peopling you have to do in politics, right? Which is super important, and you have to do it. It's like a grassroots kind of work, right? So that's super important, but that's completely separate from governance. And
Mhm.
what happens nowadays, it's kind of, you have the peopling side of things, which spills into governance, and it doesn't really work that way. Like, you cannot have governance that is people pleasing in that regard. Like, you
Mhm.
cannot actually do politics where it's really opportunistic at the short term scale, where it's like, okay, I am now optimizing for the maximum results over, one tweet or whatever, the equivalent of that. Like,
Mhm.
you cannot actually govern a country like that. A country is governed over 4 years, 8 years, 20 years, and so on. So you have to
Oh yeah.
have like a longer term perspective. And it's the thing that in Western countries we have kind of forgotten, and now we have fallen victim into the short-term cycle, so the peopling side of politics. And again, here I am not saying that the peopling is bad. What I'm saying is that we have an imbalance. So there is that.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. It again. It's. I think it's a also combined with the, I guess, more rational people are also just like exiting out of politics is
Hmm.
another problem,
Hmm. Hmm.
unfortunately.
And it's sort of the natural process of things. Like,
Mhm.
let's say you become a politician, and you want to have this more nuanced take, so you send out this message using the mechanism we described earlier, and yeah, nobody responds. You are not voted in office. Like, so what do you do?
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you retire from politics. So the person
Mhm.
who was maximizing for effect there, optimizing for effect, well, is in power. So there's that.
Yeah, and I've also heard from the 2024 election, at least, that the rate of like younger people voting in the government where it was declining,
Mm, hmm.
and that just made me ask a question. So, what is the government going to look like 20 years down the line?
Hmm.
Where
Hmm.
if we barely have anyone voting, do we even have a democracy anymore? Because, well, if no one is voting, no one has a opinion to speak about because
Hmm.
everyone has the same opinion that they derive from social media or whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then we just don't have a democracy anymore. That entire concept is destroyed.
Yeah, yeah, correct. And what you can have, like in many countries, you can see this. I don't need to name them, where they have elections, like they have political parties. Basically, if you just see it superficially, you are like, okay, well, like
Mhm.
they have all the formalities of a democracy, but they don't have the substance of it. And I think you can have this. Like you just have an empty shell of a democracy, and I think you can have this happen in practically every democratic country, where
Mhm.
we are paying tribute to the norms, the formalities, and we lose sight of the substance, namely the fact that we do not effectively participate in the structures that
Oh yeah.
decide on our behalf.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, of
Absolutely.
course, your concern is a very valid concern. Like, I mean, if the younger generations are effectively withdrawing from the process, like, of course, down the line, it means that there is nobody left to vote. Like, so
Yeah.
we have what exactly?
Uh, it's not, that's not my.
Yeah, yeah, of course,
Oh.
but yeah, so we would
Huh.
have different forms of an oligarchy, effectively. So it
Uh-huh.
could be a technocracy, it could be a plutocracy, but now
Yeah.
we are playing with words. The essence is that we wouldn't have broad-based popular participation
Yeah.
and the relevant consensus.
Mhm. Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask is like, do you consider yourself a reader? Like, do you read a lot of books?
I read not a lot of books. I read a lot of websites. Like I read a lot of articles.
Mhm.
Whatever I find, I will read it in depth if it's on a topic that interests me. With books specifically, it's hard because I enjoy reading physical books as opposed to reading a book on the screen. But the thing
Mhm.
is, to get to procure books, it's kind of tricky here because shipping costs are relatively expensive. So I'm like, well, I don't want to pay like 120 euro for one book or whatever. Like that's too much.
Mhm.
And so for me, I'm very reluctant to buy books, and effectively, I don't read that much. Also, I should say though, like there is a certain trap with reading because uh, you can read a lot without integrating that into action. So you develop a theory of everything, or like you are aware of a theory of everything, but you don't have a practice, like an intuition of what you have studied. So what can happen with books is that at some level, instead of making you smarter, they make you dread trying to do whatever it is
Yeah.
because you understand how broad the field is and how little you actually know.
Mhm. And I would say that's also in relation to failure,
Mm.
because humans by default are afraid of failure. You know, they don't want to fail. And when you're reading a book, when you're learning about something, well, obviously you don't fail in anything. You're just
Mm.
learning.
Mhm.
But learning that and not actually taking action leads to nothing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and therefore not embracing failure. But what I've noticed is when you embrace failure, you can learn from that, and you
Mhm.
can say, okay, well this thing didn't work in Emacs, so I'm going to try adjusting this thing. I'm going to try placing this code in like this set of parentheses and whatnot, you know, or like this function, whatever.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, very good point. Very good point. And I think that's true. And um, underlying that is a certain outlook, like for how you conduct yourself in general in life, which is like um, there is no such thing as security in life. Like, and it also connects to what we were saying earlier about the savings and all that. Of course, you
Mhm.
can have reasonable expectations. You can prepare for certain outcomes, contingencies, and all that, having a
Mhm.
plan B and so on. So, of course, you can do a lot of things that are perfectly reasonable, but you will never have complete security. So the attitude you effectively have to survive is one of struggle, one of being able to deal with the indeterminate, the unknown, the unclear, that which is not yet obvious to you. And basically, you have to be like, okay, I will cope with the challenge. I will prepare, I will do what I can. But, well, at some level, I'm also ready. Like, bring it on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And so it helps to also put things to the test, like put yourself
Mhm.
to the test. And you don't have, of course, to do that in a manner that is dangerous or very risky. Like you can fail in places where it's safe to fail. Like, for example, in
Mhm.
the context of Emacs, well, it's totally okay to fail. Like, okay, so what? What happened? Like, nobody will complain. The whole world does not depend on you succeeding.
Mhm.
So that sort of thing is fine. Of course, if you are handling the nuclear password, you better not fail.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like what do you do when it comes to food? Like, do you cook meals for yourself, or how does that taken care of?
So yeah, I do cook. Usually, though, I eat raw, so like salads or anything that you don't need to cook. But of course, when I need to cook, I do cook.
Mhm.
So I do that, and then of course, to answer a question you asked me earlier, so I have a gas stove for that. I bought it secondhand.
Okay.
So I have that as well, and you light a fire and it works. And it's with how do you call it? I think in America you call it the propane gas.
Yeah,
Basically, it's
propane
a
gas. Yeah.
canister. It's
Mhm.
like a cylinder, and
Yeah.
you just attach it and you have fire.
Nice. Yeah.
And for
Hmm.
me, that's a good I could, in principle, I could have something that is electricity based. But the problem
Mhm.
with that is that anything that needs to generate a lot of heat is really power intensive, power hungry. So in my case, it would consume approximately 50% of what my inverter can output.
Wow.
So, like just that thing alone. And the computer and everything else I have is like 3%, just to give you a sense of
Oh,
scale here.
wow.
So I'm like, but if you think about it, I'm like, okay, so I could have the computer, all the lights switched on, and the stove, the electric stove, and that's like, let's say 53% or 60% or whatever. That's still okay, right? In principle, it is okay. But what happens is, like, these are the optimal conditions, but you cannot think that way. You have to think of, okay, but what happens on a rainy day, on the third day of a rainy week, right? Where I need to cook and I also need to do work on the computer, right? So
Mhm.
you cannot rely on that. So that's how I was thinking of it.
Yeah. And another question I have is,
Hmm.
do you how? Because I remember reading once on your website um, that you do calisthenics.
Hmm.
Now, I personally don't go to a normal big box gym.
Hmm.
I We have a little home gym that I work out in.
Hmm.
And it's more than enough. But eventually, I'm thinking of this in a minimalistic perspective here.
Hmm.
Uh, and calisthenics was something that, like an idea that I just had, because you're just using basically just your body and a couple of tools like a pull up bar and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, how did you like? Do you regularly do it? And if so, how did you like learn it? Did you just like search up online or whatnot?
Well, in my case, I was also an athlete, like growing up. So I was playing
Okay.
football. I'm I,
Mhm.
I'm actually really intense. Like I'm really athletic. Of course, not to the same degree I was back then, but I'm actually still at a high level. I would say. Like I could easily play football for 90 minutes very easily. Not a problem,
Mhm.
for sure. So I learned from a young age in that regard. But the thing with calisthenics specifically, also from what we have discussed before, is that it truly is a minimalist. Like you don't really need like a lot of stuff. But it's not just that. It's also a matter of longevity because um, there is this trend nowadays. I will talk about male bodies, right? I don't know how it is with female bodies, but there is this
Mhm.
trend of bulk. Like the bigger the better, right? And the bigger the better means that you have to sustain it with something that you don't get easily. Like you have to have all those supplements, right? You have to have all those boxes with powder and milk and
Mhm.
whatever you're doing, your little shakes over there. So you basically have to have a very different lifestyle, which you cannot easily get if you live, let's say, in the mountains. Like, so it's a lifestyle that has lots of dependencies to do it. Plus,
Mhm.
um, if you are doing like the bulk centric kind of exercise, so you are doing it to look big, what happens is that, well, you also have to sustain that, right? Like, and it's a kind of commitment to a certain lifestyle, which I guess has lots of dependencies. Whereas with calisthenics, uh, you are doing fitness, but not bulk, and it's a different thing.
Mhm.
Like you are strong, but like if you wear baggy clothes, nobody thinks you are strong. So
Yeah.
you have the fitness, you have everything it takes, but you look tiny, as it were. So, but you are also nimble in that regard in terms of dependencies. Like you could be anywhere.
Yeah. In the younger generation, they call those kind of things like that kind of strength like a sleeper build, like what I
Sleeper
hear.
build.
Yeah, what I hear from the younger kids and stuff, which basically like, oh yeah, you look tiny and like you barely have any muscle mass, but oh yeah, you can easily like lift this 200-pound person with ease. Like,
Of
like,
course, of course.
I just have I had a friend who showed me that like he just picked up his friend, which was like twice his size because he's short, and then he was just like, oh yeah, I just looked him up with ease. Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, there is that. Plus, in a real world scenario, like strength is not just
Mhm.
like the power you can put in a punch or how much of a dead weight you can lift. It's also for how long can you do it.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Mhm.
for example, okay, let's say somebody has a strength, let's say a punch of 100, okay, random number here, and they can throw like 3 punches. And somebody has a strength of 20, right? But they can throw 1,000 punches. So you don't want to mess with the second guy.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the idea.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, that's interesting take on it.
But the point is one of really its dependencies, and it's also a matter of who are you doing it for. Like, are you training, are you exercising to tell the world that you are strong, or are you doing it for your own health? Because for me it's for my health. Like, for me it's like
Mhm.
effectively quality of life. And what I mean by that concretely is like, I wake up in the morning, I feel like energized. I have a lot of energy to do work. Like, basically, I write articles every day. It's not because I have a lot of free time, it's because I am so focused that I can produce it very quickly. I don't have basically brain fog, the equivalent of that, or quality of life in the sense of, well, I can just go up the mountain here, like it's steep like that, but I can still go and enjoy the sunrise or the sunset or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So for me, it's like my ticket to that sort of experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have like I mainly do strength training now
Hmm.
because to me the it's the concept of increasing like over time the weight and the difficulty of calisthenics.
Hmm.
That's what's really difficult for me to understand compared to like strength training. I'm not necessarily big,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
um, but I work out 5 times a week,
Hmm.
just in my home gym,
Hmm.
and it's a lot easier for me to just think, okay, if I want to up the difficulty, I just increase the weight. With calisthenics, you have the variations, and then how like the repetitions of the exercise you were trying to do, and you have to combine those in together to over time like increase difficulty. And then
Correct,
there's also
correct.
the part where, and that's what I heard, you can't really work out things like your legs with calisthenics like you can with strength training, because calisthenics is mostly general, like is targets more general parts of the body, like the entire back, like with pull-ups, than a
Hmm.
specific part of the back.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Like, there are different things you would do, but of course, like, you would still go, for example, for a walk up the mountain, and well, if you do that, you will see that you do train the leg. But yeah, of course, I get what you are saying for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. So
The,
like,
the thing though is always like, because of course you mentioned the difficulty. The thing is that eventually you don't want that to become an end in itself, like, okay, let me keep
mhm.
increasing the difficulty. Like, eventually you have diminishing returns. Eventually it kind of becomes a
Oh yeah.
life of its own, whereas you want to train so that you can enjoy other things in life. Because if training is your life, of course, if you want to do that, that's fine. But if that's not your
Mhm.
goal, that basically you have to reach a point where you're like, okay, I do it for maintenance. I don't do it to keep like the intensity going. Like, okay, let me make it ever more difficult every now and then.
Mhm. Yeah. It, so like, what's your what is your typical routine like? Because I know you also do a lot of manual labor
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
your house as well.
hmm So on days that I will do manual labor, generally I will train very little. So if I work
Mhm.
with the pickaxe, for example, for a long time, like the pickaxe basically affects all the upper body, like all the upper
Mhm.
body muscles. So it's not a good idea to work with the pickaxe and then also go do some pull-ups or
Mhm.
whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's not a good idea. Like basically you are putting too much stress on those muscles. So if I am doing any kind of manual labor, then I won't train that part. But I would do my abs. I would do some. How do you call them? Like the where you are sitting and you're standing. How do we call those?
Squats.
Squats. Yes, of course,
Yeah.
squats. So that's good. So yeah, I will do these sorts of things. So the rest of the body. But
Mm.
it's also really like a lot of walking, a lot of hiking. Really, it's not just walking because I go up the mountain and then down the mountain, and I do it at a fast pace. So it's not like
Mhm.
casual walking.
Okay. Hmm. And then you think alongside like with those long walks, like um that's also again because I got influenced by you when I started doing it in September
hmm
of last year, where I also found to be really enjoyable. So I might as well continue doing it. Um, but I also like think of like certain problems I'm trying to fix. Like
hmm
maybe it's a Linux problem that I have unknowingly caused upon myself.
You
but
know what we were saying earlier about
yeah,
fail, no problem.
yeah. But yeah, or is it just sometimes just some like general life problem I'm
hmm
just trying to think through. And I find just walking like in one of the books I was reading, it's the author calls it productive meditation.
mm
He attached a name to it. I was already doing it anyway. Um, and basically it's where you just do something like physically, but your mind is not like used in any way. But like you're not
hmm
necessarily unless you're in a city, of course, where you have to focus a lot. But I mean, like in nature, we're walking in nature. You don't have to worry about like traffic or anything like that. You can just think in your mind or
hmm
admire the nature
hmm
and it's all in all its beauty.
Correct, correct. That's exactly how it is. And it also connects to what we were saying in the beginning, where it's like you learn to appreciate the little things.
Mhm.
And of course, you can focus on whatever it is that troubles you, and you can think things through, which of course is beneficial. But also, you learn to appreciate the fact that, oh, look, like there is a tree over here, and I
Mhm.
notice these fine details. Like I notice that the color of its leaves is slightly different than the other trees. So of course, when it's more vivid, it's a younger tree or whatever. So you start observing these little details, and these little details maybe they don't really matter practically in your life, but you begin to appreciate what is around you. And I think what happens when you do that, also in the context of minimalism that we were discussing earlier, you start developing situational awareness, like uh, things you have around you. You register them as being around you, so you are mindful of them, and
Mhm.
effectively, it's like you have a minimap, like with video games. It's like you walk
Mhm.
and there is a minimap around you that you know everything, kind of. So even though you cannot see the terrain, you can see the minimap in your head, and it's like, okay, I can see what is there, right? So
Yeah.
having that kind of situational awareness, I think, empowers you for many many things in life. Like it's like you have like the spider sense, like the sixth sense. You can see something happening before it's there, almost. Like it's like, well, I know the place, so I know what can happen here. Like I can see it happening. And at least in my case, like for example, there were the forest fires last year, so the wildfires last year. And because I have traversed these mountains so many times, I knew what was the best exit route for me. And I knew that not just the route in terms of the shortcut or whatever, but also like the soil itself. I know that I won't go through some soft soil because, trying to walk on soft soil tires you out. It's actually hard terrain, so that's actually better. So like these sorts
Mhm.
of details, and I'm like, yeah, my situational awareness in this specific case really helped me. But I think generally it's a skill worth practicing. Like I see it apply in many places, in many situations.
Yeah. You mentioned that in the video before. The the one that really helped me out, it was somewhere last year when I was like, oh man, I really need to stop using, stop watching you so much YouTube and stuff.
Hmm.
It was a video where you were doing manual labor, but you were also talking about computer distractions and physically distancing yourself from the computer
Hmm.
as a way to condition yourself to less distractions.
Hmm. 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 And it's really about learning to live without it, like, and it's not just about the physical labor specifically, like even with the smaller wins, like for example I used to have my meal in front of the computer or in front of the laptop or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, let me have something to eat, and also, okay, let me read this article or whatever. And I think that's a terrible idea. I think what you want to do generally in life is have like associations, because we have associative memory. Like build
Mhm.
those associations where it's like, now I am in eating mode. This is break time mode, right? So I'm not doing anything else. So I have a restful break, like a meaningful break. I actually pay attention to this meal. I can actually savor the taste. I can feel the texture. It's more real. It's like it has a three dimensions to it, right? It's not like an ordeal. It's not a detail that happens on the background, in the background,
Mhm.
right? So, and this is something I do with basically everything nowadays. For example, when I am on the computer, of course now we are talking, so I am properly dressed and all that, right? But even if I am not talking to anybody, and even though there is nobody around here, I will still dress as if I am going to an office. Like I will wear my shoes, I will have like a proper attire, all that. Of course, I'm
Mhm.
not saying like a very formal kind of dress code, but I'm just talking about like, okay, how would you show yourself like in public? How would you appear in public? Like basically, I wouldn't be naked. That's what I'm saying, right? So
Mhm.
whereas I could be naked, and yeah, it's just my house. I do whatever I want, right? And of course, if I'm not doing any video or whatever, right? But what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that you don't enter into work mode. You don't enter into office mode, right? So you build the
Mhm.
wrong kind of association. Whereas if I'm like, you know what? Now it's work time. So I dress, I am on the computer. So I dress properly, I am on the computer, I do work. And then when it's sleeping time, relaxing time, or whatever, I do what is appropriate for that, right? So I will take off my shoes, for example, and now it's more restful, right? So that kind of thing. Basically, don't try to mix things together. Try to keep them separate, and I think that
Mhm.
really helps.
Yeah. I and that's something I've actually like I have been following that concept for a little while now. Where you like in digital minimalism, which ironically enough, it's kind of the opposite of the, I guess, traditional sense of minimalism, where like, oh, yeah, have as few stuff as possible,
Mm.
where you kind of divide your activities on the devices you do into separate devices. Like if you game, for example, uh, you don't like, the idea is you don't game on your primary computer, you're going to
Mm.
game on a console instead.
Mm.
And,
Mhm.
and that's just simply because, okay, you develop that connection of being like, okay, well, I'm going to relax on the couch and I'm going to do a bit of video gaming now,
Mhm. Mhm.
compared to the computer where you're supposed to be, focused and working.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. I fully agree with that.
Yeah. It- however, with the minimalism side of things, of course, I mentioned earlier, yeah, be intentional with what you have.
Of course.
But I've also noticed, yeah, even if you are like being intentional with what you have, it over time, like the more and more stuff you have, it still inevitably gets hard to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I like I'm experimenting around with like, okay, do I really need like a separate phone to
Mm-hmm.
listen to music, for example, or can I just use like my computer to listen to it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, intentional, of course. Um, like combining everything into one device again.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the opposite of what I'm doing, but simply because what I've noticed is it's really, really hard, like to manage multiple devices
Mm-hmm.
compared to one device. Like even with tools, like I mentioned earlier, like NixOS or like attended unattended updates on like Debian, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still have extra maintenance with those extra devices, like
Correct,
servers.
correct, correct. Of course, one thing to consider is like somebody who's writing a book with the intent of making a bestseller or whatever. Like they also have to give like advice that is easy to apply, right, and not have to think about it too much, I guess. So
Mhm.
I think the author would agree with you on this, but of course, like the market kind of demands simplicity, right?
Oh yeah.
But I think, of course, like the spirit of, okay, divide it into as many devices as you can. I think the spirit of it is not really, okay, literally actually have one
Mhm.
device for every single website, right? But it's like have basically compartments in your life. So it could be one device, but maybe if you can have like the equivalent of what we do in Emacs, MX office mode, MX gaming time mode,
Yeah.
right? Like basically this sort of thing.
Yeah. Man, it's such like I really, really wish Emacs actually had that ability, like, oh yeah, gaming mode, or well, maybe you could actually do that, maybe, but like, you probably shouldn't combine like try and put everything into Emacs. I think that's just a bad idea.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
like
Well, of
there's
course,
like
if that happens, then it will give a whole new meaning to I am just messing around with my configuration,
yeah. Yeah, I remember one Emacs package made by someone, and like he was trying to create like a video editor inside Emacs. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Still, I don't think like, and I noticed this with Blender too. Like
Hmm.
Emacs tries to be like kind of like the jack of all trades
Mm.
in a sense, where you just combine everything into one. But like Blender, I also think shares the same spirit. Like I even remember watching last year in their like yearly Blender conference they have one of their videos where one of the Blender developers mentioned, "Oh yeah, we're trying to create a like jack of all trades program, so you basically never even have to leave Blender." I like that concept because the
Mm.
the entire idea like of like doing your rendering in Blender, modeling in Blender, compositing in Blender, like post production.
Hmm.
Like I mainly use Blender for most of the things related to 3D, but I still use like a Windows virtual machine on my computer
Hmm.
for this one program. It's called Affinity Photo to edit my renderings, just to finish it off, make it look nicer and stuff.
Hmm.
But I'd love to not have that dependency because Affinity Photo is still closed source. It got bought out by a company that is a pretty for-profit company, and eventually will encapify Affinity. And well,
Hmm.
unfortunately, GIMP is not good enough yet.
Hmm. Hmm. Of course, of course, of course, of course. But yeah, if you can do everything inside of Blender, that's good. If you need to use something else, of course, yeah, you have to make compromises. Yeah, but
Oh yeah.
that's ultimately like yeah. Also, what is the nature of the job? What does it demand?
Mhm.
And it also goes a little bit to what we were saying earlier, which is like, well, you also want to focus on the essence. Like, why am I even here? I'm here for the job, right? Like the end product I want to produce. And of course, like the software I use, of course, is great, but ultimately that's not the goal.
Mhm. Yeah. It,
And of
Man,
course, I'm looking forward to the day where Blender handles email, like.
Well, we already have that in Emacs. You have
Yeah, I
the
know.
GNU's MU4E. Not much. Just actually, not much is kind of ironic, the naming of it, because
It's funny.
it's not much, but it's
Mm-hmm.
Emacs is. It depends how you look at it. You could follow the Unix philosophy, I guess, as a Lisp interpreter, or you can just not follow the philosophy and just combine everything into one modulation. I think that's the word. Into one program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, that's a philosophical thing to do, because if you weren't doing that, you would be dogmatic, not philosophical. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember watching. You're a pretty big influence, by the way.
And just to say, sorry, just to say something on this, like, which of course people have to be responsible when they share stuff online, because what happens is that you can say the most wild things online, and in line with what we were saying earlier, it has virality. So of course, like, if your goal is to be popular or whatever, like, be super effective, you can very easily mislead people. Like, people who maybe don't have experience on that specific topic, they cannot tell what's fact and what is hyperbole. So yeah, I think people should be careful generally. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's just, you're just a big influence on me. We're like, when I did first, like, start learning Emacs, for instance, and I'm sorry if this is offensive to you.
No, it's not offensive.
I'm being honest here.
Yeah, no, good.
I encountered one of your videos, like, because I want to integrate email into Emacs. So I was like, who is this weird bearded guy on the internet? Because it was like one of your videos from like 5-6 years ago. But like,
I had like a long beard and long hair, I think.
Yes. Like, I remember reading this one comment on YouTube, like, someone described you as, oh wow, this is like, this guy's like Jesus.
Yeah, of course. The thing is, of course, that it's funny.
Yeah, it is. You change your hairstyle like every single week.
Like, I hadn't realized this actually. Like, and it was pointed to me out recently. I think Christian Linkarzu, that guy. He pointed it out recently, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he's absolutely. Of course, part of that is that I don't do videos that frequently. Like, I don't do them on a daily basis. Like, there are times where I will go like a month without doing a video or whatever. And the thing is, like, with shaving, it's tricky. Like, if you let it grow, of course, then that's fine. But if you start shaving, like, for example, now I wanted to shave earlier and I didn't do it. And I'm like, now what happens is, either I must commit to let it grow, which means I have to spend like I don't know, a month or 2 months so that it starts to look nice. Or I have to shave it right away, right? So then you cannot afford to have that in-between state. But in my case, what happens is that I have to shave frequently, and I'm really lazy. So what happens is, like, I might do it on a weekly basis. So of course, every week I will look very different.
Yeah. And then you have your selfies page where, like, you have like this one selfie that's like the dog man, and then the pirate. Yeah. It's funny. You look good with a beard, I think.
I did that on purpose, by the way. Like, I like, let me do the pirate now, and then the other one was like, okay, I shaved off the beard, and I was thinking of using the title, which is like, I went from Uncle Prot to Nephew Prot. Like,
okay.
Like, there's the with a full beard, like, and then it's like, clean shave.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually when it comes to guys. Like when they don't have a beard, they look a lot younger. Like I have
Yes.
another friend of mine who recently like he's an older guy, but he recently shaved his beard, and oh my goodness, like I'm not joking. He looked 15 years younger.
Happens. No, this is a real story now. So me, I was born in 1988. So in case you don't know, people back then were literally 8-bit. So now they are 4K. But so
Okay.
1988, right? So it was like this 5 years ago or whatever. So this long beard and the long hair. There was this neighbor. I used to live in another place, and there was this neighbor, and we were having a conversation. And in Cyprus, something major happened in the 70s. It doesn't really matter now, but we were talking about that. And this guy is like, "How old were you in 1970?" And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? Like, I was born like 20 plus years later." Like, but then I realized, like, oh my goodness, yes. And then after a while, I did a clean shave and all that. And he was like, I seriously thought you were like over 50 years old and you're like 30 or
Yeah. The funniest
it's fun.
selfie I found of you on your website was the one where you just look away from the camera. It looks hilarious.
I don't know which one it is, but I can imagine. Yeah, I
It,
cannot remember.
yeah. It was one where when you're in the reeds, like tall blades of grass. I don't know what the
Uh-huh.
surroundings look like, but and then you were just looking away from the camera while your phone was pointed at your face, but you were just
Yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah,
off
of
to the
course.
side.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
The thing now with beards, specifically on facial hair, is like, and this happens with males, right? Like, so you have a beard, and like all the guys are like, oh, luscious hair, fabulous. How do they call it? They have a word for it, like glorious beard, the glorious beard or whatever. And in real life, they will be like, oh, look at that. Can I touch it? Can I touch it? And I'm like, my friend, I don't even know you. What are you talking about? Like, oh no, let me touch it. And you get the feeling if you talk to guys that like beards are the best thing ever. And there is not a single woman that will ever tell you like actually you look good with a beard. Like if they are
Yeah.
diplomatic about it, they will say, "Yeah, it looks nice. Yes, I can see that or whatever. But of course, you could have a more clean face or whatever."
Yeah.
They will basically tell you very quickly, like shave that thing.
Yeah. I have noticed that. Yeah.
And I think they are right.
Yeah. It's
It's easier
I
to
don't know.
manage.
It is. Well, actually, okay. I don't know. I don't know fully, but I was what I hear. Okay. I'm still young and I have not fully grown a beard yet, but yeah, it's from what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question that I have though is like, have you like do you do things on paper sometimes? Like, and if so, like, what's your like workflow with that?
So nowadays, no. I used to do, but nowadays, no.
Mhm.
So for me, the idea with the paper is to write down in a more focused way, like what I used to do in the past. So basically, it's not just a one line kind of thing. It's like, okay, let me actually develop this. And I would write, and it would be like a more fleshed out thought.
Mhm.
Nowadays, I don't do this because I am in a good flow of publishing regularly, writing regularly. So I
Mhm.
have basically optimized my flow there, my workflow. What I think paper is good for is to have it as a tool that you can easily check on. Like you open your notebook and you go through the pages very quickly, and you can see, oh, look at what I have been doing, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can learn a lot from that. Um, with
Mhm.
the thing with the paper also that I like is that it forces you to slow down, and
Mhm.
I think slowing down also in the concept of minimalism, like doing fewer things, but slowing down, I think aids you, benefits you, is what allows you to actually take a deep breath and focus on like collect your thoughts and what focus on your what you want to do. It's like channel your energy towards something purposeful, right?
Mhm.
Whereas if you are like going at full speed, if your pace of life is like that, it's impossible for you to concentrate. Like it's like your thoughts are flying past you, or you cannot see them in detail. So
Mhm.
paper helps with that, but it's not the essence. Like it helps, but if you can do that digitally, then of course it also is good.
Yeah, I have for a long time now. I've been experimenting with paper and digital. It's like a internal fight in my mind
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I love the advantages of paper.
Mm.
Where like I have like a cheap notebook that I got from a standard supermarket, and I just journal and I write about what I want on there on a daily basis. Because I think journaling is great. Like I
Mm.
genuinely think it has helped me a lot.
Mm.
Um, However, I do like I due to cost saving and stuff, uh, I have made myself like these little pocket notebooks,
Mm.
and they're basically like little notebooks that they're like 5.5 by 3.5 inches,
Mm.
which can fit in your pocket. It's like the perfect size. And I what I do is I have two of them with this like one case that like a friend a couple months ago gifted me. And I just have one specifically for like notes, like when I'm out and about, like I don't know, uh, um, I'm watching a talk that someone's presenting, um, or whatnot. Like then I'll take notes on that. Uh, or if I have an idea that I want to quickly jot down, I'll just jot it down in my notebook. And then I have another one, which is another question I'll get to shortly,
Mm-hmm.
um, is for my scheduling. And my kind of scheduling is just like basically like basic to dos, but also um, like time blocking. Maybe you've heard of that
Mm.
before,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
where you basically just dedicate like a certain amount of time to a specific activity, and then you stop at that desired time.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, you have to modify it throughout the day because nothing is perfect. You can't just follow your schedule perfectly because inevitably things will come up. Um, but like I use it not as like a strict guide for me, but as a baseline. Because oftentimes I'm like, okay, I don't have enough time during this day, so I'm just not going to do this one activity. And I think one of the biggest things, important points about habit building is consistency. And like, okay, I'll just skip this day. It's no big deal. But then I'll skip
Mm-hmm.
the next day and the next day and the next day. What? It's a cycle. And I find that time blocking, when I use it as a baseline for my schedule, it's like, okay, I actually know how much time I can put into this one activity if things go according to plan. Because, like, again, I just have this like mental, guess, block that just tells me, oh yeah, I just don't have enough time for this, so I'm just going to do another day. But I look at this, and I'm like, oh, okay, I actually do have enough time, so I'm just going to slot into my schedule here, and then I just write it down
Mm-hmm.
on paper. And the reason why I write it down on paper instead of like my computer or my phone is because I don't want to be carrying them around with me, especially my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that paper is really, really nice for that. Of course, it does have its disadvantages, like, well, if you got to rearrange something, it's going to be a lot harder than just doing a Control C C T on
Mm-hmm.
Emacs and just changing the schedule to it.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
task.
For
Um,
sure. For sure.
yeah, it's and then for my notes and my ideas, I have denote for that. I like on a daily basis in the evening. I will just before I get off my computer, I'll just copy the things I took down on my notebook, and I will just copy them over to my digital, what they call brain, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then like my ideas, and I recently just like started playing around with this workflow with like org capture.
Mm.
Um, and sometimes depending on like what I'm doing, like whether I'm on my notebook, like away from my computer or on my computer, I will just simply jot down like an idea because like or capture is really really useful for that. Um, and then like combined with denote journal, I will just have these daily log entries for that.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I think with workflows and with note taking and with reminders and all that, um, there is no such thing as the perfect setup
Mhm.
or the objectively correct setup. Like there are some good ideas that I think everybody converges on, but then there are a lot of things that are particular to each person and um, to how each person thinks, like basically how their brain functions,
Mhm.
right? But also what their values are. Like for example, if you want to minimize distractions, like what we have been discussing here, it makes perfect sense to not take your phone with you. Plus, why would you actually use the phone to write notes? That already sounds inconvenient, like,
Mhm.
from an
Yeah,
ergonomics point of view.
and one thing I'll say about that, I
Hmm.
have experimented like especially last year.
Hmm.
I used Emacs on my phone.
Oh, wow.
It's it, oh my goodness, it's not as good as of an experience as on computer. I mean,
Mm,
of course, you have like things like Termux, which is still something I use. Like, if I really, really need to for like quick server work, because if I
mm,
don't have my computer with me, like, and I'm
mhm,
out and about for several hours.
mhm,
Um, but other than that, no, my phone is like exclusively used for communication. I even like disabled the web browser on there. And like it's a Google Pixel that I bought used last year in August. Um, and I just flashed this alternate operating system that's called Graphene OS, which is like
mhm.
a private privacy suspecting ROM, Android ROM. But then before then, I did like the good old ADB, remove all the bloat on the phone and just have something pretty minimalistic that way. Um, but yeah, just using like what I've noticed is a lot of people like to use their phones for everything basically, but
Mm, mhm,
again, I say this like finding a balance. Um, I think having different devices to an extent, again, emphasis on to an extent, uh, for separate things like I don't know, a TV to watch movies or TV shows instead of your phone will be significantly better and significantly more enjoyable than doing everything on your phone or like checking your email on your phone. Like am I going to respond to someone on my phone? Like I can type twice as fast, if not faster, on my computer than
mhm,
on
mhm,
my phone.
mhm.
So,
Yes, yes, yes. Plus, of course, like there may be the nature of the job where you have to do things on the phone. So I don't want to
oh
say, okay, in every
yeah.
possible case, this is bad. But assuming you can live without apps on the phone, I think it's better to do it that way because, like, it's not work mode. Like, if you are out because you are not in the office. So, of course,
Mhm.
you don't need to carry the office with you, unless, of course, that's your job again, right? So, then, yes, like in my case, I don't do anything productivity related on the phone. It's really for phone calls and for the camera.
Mhm. Yeah. I One really nice feature that I have noticed, and I have been using a little bit on Graphene OS. So it's very specific to Graphene OS.
Mm.
Uh, but they have this one thing called user profiles, and I know default Android has this. Well, besides Samsung,
Mm.
uh, but like the normal Google Pixels and stuff, um, you can create several different user profiles.
Ah, okay.
But Graphene OS has raised that limit from 3, which is the standard, all the way to 31.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can create 31 different users if you really wanted to. You probably shouldn't, but that's besides the point. But look, you can compartmentalize
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
activities on the phone, and when you want to do something like, okay, I'm going to check social media on my phone, which I don't
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
but some people do, I guess. You can have like a dedicated profile on for social media, and you have that friction, which it takes a couple minutes to switch to a new profile, and then you have to unlock it with the pin and stuff. Um,
Yes, yes,
to
yes.
get into the social media app instead of just having it on your home screen and clicking the app icon.
Yes, yes. So yeah, of course, having some friction there, I think,
Mhm.
helps. Though, of course, what happens in cases like this usually is people are like, okay, I will compartmentalize accordingly. Eventually, they're like, you know what? I really love my social media on the phone,
Oh yeah,
so this will be my default profile.
yeah.
So the
That's true.
friction now, what happens is the friction is to get out of there. So you're like, I'm not leaving. It takes 2 minutes. I will just stay
Yeah, mhm.
here.
It's
But of course,
and
no, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Of course, like
it's like what you said about physically distancing yourself from computers.
yes, I think fundamentally it comes down like there is this idea of like willpower, and I think willpower
Mhm,
is like overrated. Of course, like having like willpower, of course, it is good, right? It does no harm to you, right? Like
mhm,
you want something, you do it, as it were. Like, but I think it's overrated in the sense that most of the time, most of the day, either because we are tired or because we haven't eaten yet, or like there are like a million reasons. Maybe we are frustrated, like somebody said something nasty to us. Like there can be so many reasons in everyday life. Like we are
mhm,
not in full control of the situation. So a better option, a better arrangement, rather than depending exclusively on your willpower, is to have structures in place that don't allow you to fail miserably. Like when you're
mhm,
at your weakest, you don't actually do. To give an example, let's say. So I will use the example of food now, but it can apply to anything. Like you're like, okay, you know what? I avoid sweets, right?
mhm,
So I avoid sweet. I also avoid alcohol. So basically, I am committed to a lifestyle that doesn't involve those. But you keep, stashed away in various parts of the house. You keep bottles of alcohol. You have all your sweets, greasy food, basically everything you are supposed to not be doing, right? So there is
mhm,
that one moment where you are upset or whatever, and you're like, okay, let me have a little bit of chocolate. Now let me have
mhm.
some, I don't know, drink, right? And of
Yeah.
course, now I feel hungry, so let me quickly fry this burger or whatever, right? And now let's have another beer or whatever. So very quickly now, this tiny little failure has created an avalanche of a failure. Like it's a complete
Mhm,
disaster, right? So if you basically didn't have that stash, like that tiny failure would have remained a tiny failure.
mhm,
But so, like, you accept that you might not have the willpower, but you also take care when you are in a position of control, when you are in a position of strength, to not leave all the tools around for your weak self to kill himself, as
mhm.
it were.
Yeah, and I know I'm making a lot of connections to like the previous videos that you made,
Hmm.
but I have watched like almost every single Prot Asks like video basically,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I find them very informational.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and with the talk with Josh you were having, you mentioned I forgot the Greek term for it, but you
Hmm.
mentioned a Greek term where you give your strong self gives constraints to your weak self.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I like that concept of things.
Yes, yes, yes. Like
Yeah.
they have it in English where it's this idea of the Ulysses contract. Like it's a term they
Hmm.
use. So Ulysses is a reference to Odysseus, right? Who is in vogue nowadays, right?
Mhm.
Because of Christopher Nolan's film. But basically, the idea with Odysseus, so it's the hero of the Odyssey. The idea is that he knew that he would reach a point of weakness. Like there are these mythical beasts called the sirens, and of course the sirens have this extremely attractive song, and it kind of pulls you to them. And because they live on the reefs, if you go there with your boat, you will sink, you will die. Of course, I have also written about the sirens in articles. Actually, it's a deep concept. But anyway,
Hmm.
the point is that Odysseus is like, well, I know this will happen to me in the future. So I will instruct my crew to tie me to the mast, right? To tie me to the ship. So I cannot actually direct the ship to the reefs, to where the sirens are, so we can keep going where we need to go. So the strong self, the self who is in a position of control, who is not under the sway of the sirens, is actually setting things up so that the weak self, who will be enchanted by the sirens, cannot actually do any harm. And
Mhm.
basically, that's the idea of what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, I really really like that concept, and I have noticed with myself, where in times of like when I'm like frustrated or whatnot, or just down for whatever reason, I will spend more time like just, and I don't really have a YouTube addiction necessarily, but sometimes I will spend extra time on like browsing websites on the internet, just surfing. Which I guess it's less of a concept now, especially since like most of websites are like YouTube, Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Most things are like on the big corporate websites.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I mean like blog and stuff. Um, but I'm still trying to work on that, just trying to figure that out. But again,
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of minimizing distractions because like uh, I used to have a desire to watch like a lot of YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, but now I don't like. Oh yeah, I'll just check these YouTube channels once a week that I I find interest in, and like, oh, they made a new video. Well, I might download that and I might listen to that sometime, like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I do. But um, for like for my RSS, like because I think RSS is great. I use
Mm-hmm.
Elfie for that.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Um, yeah. um, I will just check it, and this requires a bit of self willpower, of course. But I check it only on Saturdays, like
Mm.
only once a week on Saturdays. If not, then I'll check it like a day after. If I don't check it on Saturday, but only once a week, and like that really like helped me, just not constantly checking RSS every day, and also filtering the RSS feed to not necessarily be news sites like I used to have. So, like when I was using other RSS readers, it felt like an obligation to read it every single day to make sure it was
Yeah.
unread.
It
Now
becomes
I
work.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. For me now, I just follow blog sites that I am
Mm-hmm.
particularly interested in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I just catch up on there. I'm like, okay, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
just go about with my day.
Yeah, I think this is a good approach. Of course, it's something you build up as a capacity
Mhm.
over time. So, of course, it's not like, well, I'm trying and I cannot do it, therefore I am a complete failure. Yeah,
Mhm.
you have to keep trying, and eventually
Mhm.
you will improve at whatever it is you are doing.
Oh yeah.
Specifically with something like YouTube, of course, it also goes back to that idea of how do you associate it? Like, for example, if you are on the couch and you bring the laptop and you're like, okay, let me watch YouTube. Now, what happens is, even if you don't have the laptop with you, you sit on the couch and you're like, well, where is my YouTube? So
Mhm.
you kind of have that association. So eventually, like you can try to observe the phenomenon, like your behavior, and be
Mhm.
like, okay, what am I doing in terms of behavior that kind of brings up this follow-up idea, and how can I break that association?
Yeah. I read this one book recently. Ever since last year, I read it. I've been reading a lot of books.
Which is
Uh,
good, of course. Yeah.
yeah, it's not only about self improvement, but also like fictional things like
Mm-hmm.
fantasy and stuff. Like I like those kind of things, like dragons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was called Atomic Habits. Pretty. It's a fairly popular book, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And like the author James Clear talks about like having like you have these cues in your environment, and when you have these cues, your brain like when you do a habit for the first time, like I don't know, you open up a video game, like
Mm-hmm.
you have after like 5 years, you're like, oh, and it's like a particularly addicting video game like Fortnite. well, maybe Fortnite's addicting, I guess, but I don't really play that much video games
Hmm.
besides one, uh, from time to time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so and then you just play on there, like, and then your brain associates that with the reward that, like, okay, you get an extra dopamine,
Hmm.
serotonin and stuff, the neurotransmitters. So
Hmm.
your brain will like that, and the next time you pass by your couch, or wherever you have it set up, I don't know, you have a console or whatnot, and you're like, oh, hmm, it'd be really really nice right now to play some video games, you know.
Yes. Yes.
And it's that association that you have, like that cue, and over time that just becomes, your brain, due to the nature of it, it's like a set of instructions, because that's
Hmm.
basically what a habit is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And your brain already knows, okay, like, so if I play a little bit of Fortnite, I'm going to get some enjoyment. And over time, the same thing with social media, you become addicted to it. And
Yes.
when
Yes.
you and like when you remove that cue to get rid of it, you remove that cue, like, so you just, I don't know, you can do something crazy and just get rid of the TV, put it in a closet,
Hmm.
put your console in a closet. Don't make it, easily accessible or whatnot. Like,
Hmm.
just make sure you don't see it. Your brain no longer can associate that cue anymore. Well, when you look at the space where the TV was, you're like, huh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
and and, yeah, over time, you just be like, okay, I just don't play, video games like that anymore.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, 100%. Another consideration here is, I think, generally speaking, we can speak of energy, or if you want to give a different word to it, like vitality. In America, they pronounce it vitality. But anyway,
Mhm,
vitality. Like, so think of your life force, like your energy bar, as it were, on a
mhm,
single day. Like, your energy is not transferable. Like, you cannot, like, for example, you cannot sleep for a week so that you can stay awake for a full week afterwards, right? Like,
mhm,
that doesn't happen. So basically, you have like a fixed amount of energy, of life force, of vitality every single day. Okay. So if you don't do activities that drain your energy, basically you have a lot of energy left. And what are you going to do with it? You will probably commit it, you will channel it to activities that are not really that interesting long term, like you don't want to be doing long term, such as those distractions and these addictions you were talking about. So, if you think in terms of vitality, you can think of, well, basically, how can I tire myself out such that I don't really have the envy to spend like 5 hours on YouTube or on the
mhm,
gaming console or whatever. And I think that can help as well, because of course I don't want to frame this in terms of productivity, because I think that's the wrong framing. Because it's
mhm,
like, okay, let me just be a bot, let me just be a cog in a machine, and all I do is I produce money. I make sacrifices to the altars of money or whatever. Like, I don't want to frame it that way. But what I mean to say is, I do something that I consider rewarding for myself. It could be recreational, it could be art, it could be whatever, but
mhm,
which I don't consider an addiction. And here I want to just clarify what I mean by addiction. Is like, I have control over it, it doesn't have control over me. If it has control over me, then of course that's what an addiction is. So
mhm.
I'm like, okay, if I can expand a lot of my vitality, then of course I won't be doing these addictions.
Now, of course, you say, like, after you're done with the work, because
So yeah,
if you
of
drain your
course.
energy, then yeah, obviously you won't have the energy to do the work that you're supposed to do.
Of course, of course. This is with the assumption that, of course, you start your day. Let's say you have to do work in the morning, and
Mhm,
you commit to work. Like, let's say you start work at 8. You don't go on the console for 5 hours, right? And you're like, okay, I will just
mhm,
show up midday
yeah.
for work. So yeah, like,
Mhm,
basically you do your work, you do all your commitments, but then you have, let's say you work, let's say 8 to 5 or whatever, like 9 to 5, whatever the schedule is, right? So you do a shift like that. Then, like, if you were to go straight home, like, you have still a lot of hours which you could be doing like these addictions. But if you, let's say you go for a walk to the park, and you go do some other activity, maybe with friends or whatever. Like you will go home, let's say at 9 p.m., and now you are more tired. You won't necessarily do that kind of addiction. Like you don't have,
Hmm.
first of all, you don't have the time. Second, you don't have as much energy. So basically, I think of it that in that sense.
Yeah. I mostly agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think some addictions like social media are not necessarily that tiring. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they can be mentally draining like after a
Mm-hmm.
little while, but initially speaking, it, you're like if you ask someone, "Oh, like is social media benefiting your life?" like a average Joe on the street, they're probably going to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because their feelings initially are like, okay, yeah, I get a lot of news from social media and stuff. Like I'm current with the world. Like I know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on
Mm-hmm.
compared to like later on where they might be feeling depressed or whatnot. I think though, like with those social media or other like low energy activities, they're not necessarily tiring. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are tired, you probably can do it. Yeah. Anyway, like in your example where, oh yeah, you get home with a group from a group of friends you spent time with at 9 o'clock. You might be in bed and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I might as well like, scroll on social media for like 5 minutes.
Yes,
No,
of course, of course.
I also think like it's you can be mentally tired, but also you have to and this connects to the weak and strong self because when you're tired you're your weak self
Mm.
and you should instead impose restrictions to not do those addictions. Like for example, you probably don't need to have your phone on your bedside table. Like for instance,
Mhm.
I don't have my phone on my bedside table. I store it in a drawer in my desk once I'm done. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
that's it. And what I use for my alarms is a dedicated alarm clock that it was like $15 at the supermarket.
Nice.
That's what I use.
Mhm.
It works without issue,
Mhm.
and I wake up accordingly. So I
Yes,
think
yes, I think that's a
doing
good
that is
approach.
better. Mhm.
Yes, agreed, agreed, agreed. And ultimately, it's a combination.
Mhm.
You want to employ as many strategies as necessary to eventually reach a stage of, well, I am in control, they are not in control.
Mhm. And last thing I will say about that though
Mhm.
is I feel like once you do get to a certain point, you don't necessarily need to keep that friction in. Like
Mhm.
I think you mentioned this one example like you traveled at a fast food restaurant like when you were in college
Mhm.
and every time you had a route you would travel an extra 45 minutes just to get to your home to avoid the fast food restaurant compared to what you say later on where you can just walk the straight path without issue.
Mhm.
I think that once you condition yourself enough you don't have those problems anymore.
Correct, correct. And that's generally the idea with anything
Mhm.
you have built capacity for. Like in the beginning, you have to earn it, like you have to work for it. It's hard, you have to maintain it. But
Mhm.
eventually, it becomes second nature. Eventually, it's indistinguishable from who you are. Like so, and that's why, of course, long term, you can observe somebody's behavior and actually understand their values, not just their behavior, because the way they behave is exactly the embodiment of this second nature. So, of course, that can really go a long way for somebody, I mean, who is committed to a lot of things. But generally, this is the idea. Like, if you always find yourself like constantly battling for it and having to push hard for it or whatever, it means that you still have work to do, and maybe you are trying to do it too quickly. Maybe you are trying
Mhm.
to build the capacity too quickly, or you are doing it when the environment has a lot of forces that work against you. Like,
Mhm.
to use again an example with diet, like you want to quit alcohol or whatever, but every night you hang out with friends, all of whom are drinking alcohol in front of you, and that's very difficult. Like, of course you are trying, but the environment isn't helpful, right?
Mhm.
So that sort of thing. So if you find yourself in a situation where you want to commit to something but it doesn't work, it's not that you don't have the skills. Like, of course, like, you build those up. That's the whole point. But you also have to be in an environment that is conducive to them, like to them growing.
Mhm. And that connects with what I mentioned about cues in the
Hmm.
environment and removing them. Yeah.
Yeah, very well, very well.
Or adding them, or
Or adding
vice
them.
versa,
Yeah.
adding them. Like, I don't know, you want to read at night instead. You can have your book on your nightstand,
Hmm.
and you could just read it. Because that's a cue. Like, oh, I have a book there. Like, I don't know, Tao Te Ching or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I did mention philosophy as one of the topics actually,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
which is something I've been getting a little bit into, a
Hmm.
little bit,
Hmm.
where I'm currently reading. Like I'm very grateful that I have a library that has a lot of books, and
Hmm.
so I can just simply go to the library and just pick out books I want. But yeah, like the two of them were Tao Te Ching and then the Analects of Confucius.
Hmm. Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they
and,
are important. Yeah, not just for
yeah.
Chinese thought. I think generally. Yeah.
I don't read the Chinese version. I read an English translated version because I can't speak or
Of
read
course.
Chinese at all. which which it has its drawbacks. Like I the I've noticed that there's a lot of interpretations of the Analects of Confucius from different scholars,
Hmm.
and I find it a little bit, mm, I would say, infuriating that like this scholar that wrote this specific edition of the Analects of Confucius uh, has like footnotes which can be helpful at times. Like I read the scholar's notes at the beginning of the book because like how he structures it is like, oh yeah, like these are like the technical terms and like the people like
Hmm.
Master Yu, Confucius, like Confucius's disciples and stuff, and then like the specific Chinese terms, and then the actual Analects themselves in the second half of the book.
Hmm.
I am only somewhat interested in the technical details here. I actually want to like my main purpose is like, okay, I want to gain like a little more like I guess wisdom in a sense,
Hmm.
um, and more proper thinking. Like, okay, I don't want to necessarily be like, like, do I care about what people are thinking about me? No, not
Hmm.
necessarily. But I also don't want to necessarily be, oh, I'll just show up, completely presentable at like a job interview. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, I'm not going to do that.
Correct.
So yeah, it's again, I'm still reading them, but so far they're pretty nice books.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
were, and I am like I am a Christian,
Hmm.
so that's just my religion personally. And I find it pretty similar to the proverbs in the Bible, like a lot of as if they're like related to each other. And
Hmm.
I don't know whether the proverbs was written before the Analects in Tao Te Ching. I think Tao Te Ching was written like just at the start of 400 BC. Um,
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not sure right now, but I believe, yeah, I believe there are, yeah,
yeah,
a few centuries
yeah.
BC. Yeah.
And then Proverbs was written, I think, if I recall correctly, beforehand. And then just the advice together. It's like structured a little bit differently because you have like the Chinese influence on both books, but most of the advice there is relatively the same.
And that's the thing generally. Once you, like, 2 points here, of course. First, the interpretation, just to say, like, if you read, like, for example, me, I can read the New Testament in Greek, right? And
Hmm.
if you start, let's say, John, you read the John, the first statement. already, like, you can spend a lifetime talking about it, like, and you
Mhm.
can interpret it in so many ways. You go right now to Bible Gateway, and you go to John, and you find the
Mhm.
English versions, the various English versions,
Mhm.
and you already on the first statement, like, they have, like, you can click and it expands, and there is
And then
commentary.
there's like, yeah, and then there's like combined with that, you have like 50 different editions of the Bible.
Correct, correct. So eventually you're like, okay, either I will have to take this metaphorically and apply judgment, or I will
Mhm.
take it literally, at which point I have to pick one of the interpretations, right? So you run into that problem with practically everything in life. So it's not just
Mhm.
about religion, like with practically everything. So we go back to what we were saying earlier, which is like, okay, at some level you have to apply judgment. You cannot just have quick and dirty rules for life, which somebody envisaged and foresaw, like centuries ago, and you apply them mindlessly without considering the specifics of your case.
Mhm.
Like, you always have to consider the specifics. You always have to be mindful of, okay, who you are, what is the case, and that connects to the situational awareness I was speaking about earlier. And once you have that attitude, you will not be thinking in terms of differences, like, oh, those are Chinese, I am Christian, blah blah blah. You will
Mhm.
be noticing the similarities, because fundamentally, once you go in depth, like, for as long as we are talking about that affects people, like, people are the same in China, they are the same in Poland and elsewhere,
Mhm.
right? So for as long as we are talking about people, eventually we will be saying the same things, we will be treading the same paths. So of course we may say it in different words, we may put emphasis elsewhere, we may use different kind of mythology around it, like, or storytelling or whatever, like whatever kind of artistic device around it, to make it memorable, to make it teachable, right? But like
Mhm.
the essence of it fundamentally will be the same. Like, and it will be like, okay, like, here are some basic principles for you as an individual. Here are some basic principles for a community of people, and so on, right? So
Mhm.
I think at some level there is always an agreement. And
Yeah.
I think the disagreements between people when it comes to schools of thought and all that is when you take things literally. And that also goes to like this, what I was saying earlier, like as a joke, like, the
Mhm.
Unix philosophy. And if Emacs
Yeah.
follows the Unix philosophy, like if you take it literally, the Unix philosophy, and you say, no, 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 you in every possible world, you have to follow everything like down to the letter. Now, that's no longer a philosophy, my friend.
Mhm.
You stop thinking, like, you just have rules that are applied mechanically, like a robot can do that. That's not long A robot is not a philosopher, right? So a
Yeah.
philosopher, as a philosopher, and the philosopher here means a friend of wisdom, like, basically what you do, like, this friendship, what it is about is, well, you think, like, of course, like, you listen to authority, you follow some guidelines or whatever, but you also think for yourself, like, you are not a mindless bot.
Yeah, and I would also say like with like these kind of texts specifically, and I guess generally life as well, having a group of friends that encourage you and also share their own opinions can help you interpret something in such a way. Like if you interpret something like in the Bible, like in Proverbs or Mark, whatever, the New Testament, um, you can interpret it like, oh yeah, there's like they talk about like Mark talks about the one unforgivable sin, like blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. I, I mean, yeah, but is that really truly the one unforgivable sin? Like,
Hmm.
it depends on who you talk to, and I think having that group of people where you can have a conversation about these such topics is important.
Hmm. 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 Correct, correct. And ultimately, now the group of people is the key, of course. Like,
Mhm.
whenever we are talking about things that affect people, whether we are talking about religion, or we are talking about philosophy, or even sport or our art. And
Mhm.
we also said earlier, like, everything converges into politics. So whenever we are talking about people, eventually we reach a point of convergence here. Like,
Mhm.
you want to find the group of people, so you want to be in the group. Like, one mistake we make, and the The person who is intellectually capable is especially prone to this mistake, myself included, right?
Mhm.
Mistake we make is like, you know what? I will do this nerdy thing where I will just think things through on my own and forget about the people, right? So I will not be talking to anyone
Mhm.
and I will just be doing my own thing. And I think that's a mistake, not because you will make mistakes. You might actually be a very good thinker in your own right, but because you are missing the point. Like the point of all this eventually is to bring people close and harmonize them, as it were. Harmonize people who are diverse among themselves and make them into something greater than each of them individually. Like basically, that's the whole point of all of this. Like whether it is religion or politics or philosophy or art or whatever, like bring diverse people together. And we miss the point when we are like, no, 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 my interpretation of this specific portion of text is the interpretation and everybody else is wrong, right? Like
Mhm.
basically that's a discussion that distracts us from the public good, which is
Mhm.
okay, where are your people, who are your people, and
Yeah.
what are you doing with them?
And I would also say that's having that group of people that that are good, that they don't necessarily like drink alcohol or other bad addictions or bad habits, is especially important because with our ancestors, like if they used to travel in groups because it was generally safer,
Hmm.
if you didn't fit in, you'd get kicked out.
Hmm.
And so it was like natural human instinct, like and still is now, to fit in, to follow the status quo.
Hmm.
And like if you have a group of friends who are alcoholics, you're even if you have willpower,
Hmm.
eventually you will run out of it. And it's not something you can just muster and say, "Oh, I will never drink alcohol again."
Hmm.
You again, you have a weak self and a strong self. Um, but I think when you have that strong group of friends who can also encourage you to not do those things like drink alcohol or spend a bunch of time on social media, um, can really help you to become a better person ultimately.
And this is very important, I think, what you're now saying, because it's basically the idea of structure, like everybody, every single person, like from the most disciplined to the most disorganized person, everybody benefits from structure in their life. Like when we don't have structure, we become wasteful, and from wastefulness, we become corrupt, and eventually we self destruct. When we have
Mhm.
structure in our life, we can channel our energy in the most productive way. Like even in the context of AI, we are talking about harnesses, right? The idea of
Mhm.
harnessing the potential, like tying it to something so that it can be useful. Otherwise, it's kind of useless. It's all over the place. And the same is true for people. Like people need a harness, as it were, so that their energy is focused on something that is of good to them and to others.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this framework, this structure can, of course, come from within in the form of discipline, but it also comes from your surroundings, from your social environment, from your
Mhm.
community. And I don't know. Maybe there is this stigma nowadays. Like if you don't have discipline, therefore you are not a good person or whatever, which I think is wrong. I think this is nonsense. Like uh, if you depend on others for structure, it's good to admit it. Like there is nothing wrong with that. Like that's how people are. It's totally okay. But you have to be honest about yourself. And having that group of people, I think, is really good. And here um, a point on hierarchy, because hierarchy has kind of become a very bad word in recent decades, also in
Mhm.
the context of the patriarchy and how terrible men are and all that. But generally
Oh.
speaking, like the hierarchy, I want to be my own boss, my body, my rules, etc. I just follow my own life and I don't listen to anybody. And what happens with that is that Well, if you are a very disciplined person, well, please go ahead, because you have the structure. You don't need anybody else. But 99.9% of people will benefit from having others around who can check on them, whether that is their friends, whether that is their siblings or their parents or whatever. Some kind of structure, and maybe some kind of, tutelary figure, some kind of hierarchy. Like in the context of, let's say, for example, a group of friends, like your friend will talk to you in plain terms, and will show you some tough love. We are talking about real friends now, not
Mhm.
acquaintances, right? So your friend will talk to you talk some sense into you in rough terms sometimes, right? And basically
Mhm.
you need that from time to time. You need somebody who is like a strong accountability structure, who will basically be like, hey, what kind of nonsense is that? Like, cut that nonsense kind of thing, right? So we do benefit from that. And I think, like, when we say, okay, I don't need anybody else in my life, and I know everything, I think that sets us up for failure. Like most people, most of the time, even the strong people, there will be a moment when you are weak. And if you don't have any of that structure around you, it will be a disastrous downfall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting actually. Like I've found these things like over time, like through my friends and through my own self experimentation, and the book I read again, Atomic Habits, it talks about all these like things. It's just I already knew them, and
Mhm.
just the author attached names to them. I didn't necessarily know how to necessarily name them because
Mhm.
I never cared to search on the internet. Oh, like what is an accountability partner? Like
Mm.
no, I just knew like oh, okay, you have a group of friends and your group of friends like heavily influences you, and it like there's I think several proverbs at this point that talk about like iron. Like the one popular one is like iron sharpens iron.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Just like a friend, gives can either just like break you or it can or your friend can build you up.
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
exactly that. It's exactly that. I'm basically admitting to that, like being like, you know what, I benefit from having others, not just in the sense of, I have friends and we drink coffee together, not just in that sense, but in the sense like I have others who will actually hold me accountable, like who will call out
Mhm.
my nonsense. Like basically, if you have friends, so called, who never call out your nonsense, they are not your friends. I think fundamentally they are people you hang out with. Maybe they are good people, nothing wrong with that, but they are not that close. So
Mhm.
a friend is somebody who will call out your nonsense without fear that you will never talk to them again.
Yeah, and I think also having a smaller group of friends who are ultimately closer to you is much more valuable than having 500 friends on social media that you probably never talk to, but you guys are just fine with giving a like to each other. Like in another book I read, like this the author talks about, hey, like you can like a post on social media, but instead of doing that, why don't you like, and I mean for instance like oh your cousin has a new baby and you like the post on social media, why don't you instead call your cousin, video
Yes.
call or whatnot,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
actually see the baby and interact with the baby through the screen. Like it's still not physically because like I don't know,
Hmm.
you can't do that for various reasons, like
Hmm.
maybe your cousin lives in a different state or something like that, but you can still video call, and video calling has a lot more um, mental information that the brain can process, and therefore far more valuable and ultimately rewarding for the brain than a single like on social media, which is a single bit of information.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's much more rich.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, I I think that's everything.
Okay. Only that.
Maybe.
No, no,
uh,
it's fine. It's fine.
yeah, I'm just reviewing my list stuff.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Here.
Yeah, me, I really enjoy talking. Like for the thing is like, and this applies to anything, like whether we are referring to books or to discussions, or
Mhm,
also in the context of what we are now discussing with friends. Always there are two sides to this. One is awareness. So the book brings something to your awareness, like the discussion brings something to your awareness, like your
mhm,
friend brings some things to your awareness. But you still have to do the work. Like others
mhm,
cannot do the work for you. So you not you specifically, but the generally,
mhm.
but you
Yeah.
still have to do the work. Like you still have to integrate that into action, and from action to habit, and from habit to second nature. Assuming, of course, it's something worthwhile, right?
Huh. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Uh, I also have noticed that we talked about that earlier. Like you can learn a bunch of stuff, like read a bunch of stuff, but ultimately, if you don't do the work, you're well, what's the point of reading that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess one last question I have, and this is a super minor question, like a give straight answer. How big is your house?
It's 48 square meters.
48 square meters.
I don't
Okay.
know
So that's about
how that is in
that.
freedom units, like.
Ah, I
Like
wish
a meter is times three for the
I
feet. Like
think so. I think it was
yeah,
somewhere around 450, 500 square feet, something like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's
yeah.
I I really really hate the imperial system. Like
Mm.
it's why can't we just have everything in the US? Like, oh yes, powers of 10, 0 to 100 for temperature, and like milligrams, grams. Why?
Yeah,
Like we have all these kind of units. Like it will be especially hard for me to do those kind of unit conversions in architecture here compared to my European friends, unfortunately.
yeah. Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why where you will need technology. It's like okay, you hit
Mhm.
the button and it's like okay, give me the feet to meters quickly.
I think um, Emacs has such a feature in the calc mode. I don't
I
know.
believe
Or
so. Yes, I haven't explored it actually.
me neither, actually. I use this one application called Calculate. It's an open source application that I use for my math and stuff. But it just seems to be very complex, and I would probably just prefer just to use a dedicated application for that. At least for now, I don't really see a point to integrate calculator into Emacs. So
Yeah, and of course you don't have to.
mhm.
Ultimately, that's not the goal.
Yeah,
Goal is to
and
work.
in yeah, and I also noticed that like, I was especially last year. It's been a very interesting 2 years in my life so far. um, I you was pretty dogmatic about like integrating everything to Emacs. It's like, oh yeah, you should totally do that. No, you really don't need to do that. Like I have since just moved a bunch of stuff away from Emacs simply because it's more of a burdensome to me. Like um, I see that some people use like vterm or like some terminal emulator in Emacs, but to me, all of them just suck. I just don't like find them to be as good as like a dedicated terminal like Alacrity or Foot or Kitty or whatnot. Like, I find those to be a lot better, and then especially for managing servers, SSH works so much better in a dedicated terminal emulator, along with tools like which I also use for managing my servers. Vim and Tmux are fantastic together. Um, but for my productivity, like I mentioned, especially my note taking, my email and stuff, and general web browsing, most web browsing, sometimes I will need a browser like a proper browser like I do now, of course. Um, yeah, I will use Emacs for those kind of things, but I'm not dogmatic about it like I used to be.
Yeah, and I think that's the right approach in general. Like I think in anything, if you start being dogmatic, basically you are missing the point. Like, and
Mhm.
this applies to anything, whether we are talking about Emacs or religion or whatever. Like, the moment you are dogmatic, you are completely misunderstanding what you are doing. Like, you are putting the cart before the horse. Like, in the
Mhm.
context of Emacs, since what we are talking about, like, you take Emacs's extensibility as an end in itself instead of the means through which you can actually do work. So you forget about
Mhm.
work, and now you are on this side project, which is Emacs.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep side project.
Of course.
There's a meme that I saw like, oh yeah, learning Vim, Nano, it's a piece of cake. It's just a straight line, and
Hmm.
then Emacs is this never ending spiral.
Yeah, and it is true. Very well, very well. So let's call
Yeah,
it a day. Then I will stop the
Mhm.
recording, and then we can close the video. So let me stop now.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, stop recording.